Yeah. I guess, you know. But we got my wife got a really cool Pacifica City Council for July 24th to order. First off is the agenda call to order, and then next roll call, please.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember Vaterlos. Councilmember Degree.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Keener.
Here.
Mayor O'Neill.
Here. Next, salute to the flag by myself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next is a special presentation by Eduardo Gonzalez from the Youth Leadership Institute. Hi, how are you? I think I've met with you guys. Go ahead.
All right. Hello, members of the council and residents of Pacifica. My name is Florence.
My name's Karina.
And I'm Sebastian.
And we are students from Oceana High School, and we are part of the Youth Leadership Institute, which fights for economic security in Pacifica. This is our public awareness presentation on payday lenders. Thank you for giving us this time to present our findings.
Okay, so what is a payday loan? A payday loan is a fast short-term loan which in California has a maximum amount of $300, not including a $45 application fee, and is required to be paid in full amount in 2 weeks. The thing about payday loans is that relative to bank loans, they require little paperwork, easy application processes, little to no credit checks, and little to no commitments. And requirements to take out payday loans can involve government issued ID, your monthly bank statement, and your earnings statement.
So where can you find these places in Pacifica? The first one we found was at the Lindemar Shopping Center near the Subway and near the Safeway. The second one was at the top of Manor Drive near the Rice and Roll and Sushi 8. And the last one we found was at the Fairmont Shopping Center near the Rite Aid and near the Dollar Store. And so where these places are established, it's very popular, very populated, and very easy to access. And so now that you know where these places are, why do you think they would be considered predatory financial services?
And that is because they trap you in a debt cycle. So if we follow this model, first you request a loan, let's say of $300. You're given 2 weeks to pay it back in full amount. There is a $45 fee though, so you only get to keep $255. If you cannot pay it back, then you're forced to take out another loan at a different establishment, and this cycle continues. Typically, people are stuck in this cycle for around 4 months, and that means $360 worth of fees, which is a lot more than your initial loan of $300. So you end up paying more than you borrowed.
So
They're not making sure you can pay, they're making sure that you stay.
And so for the past 2 months or so, our team, along with 2 medical interns from the Samuel Merritt University, have been conducting public opinion surveys throughout Pacifica. And so what we concluded was that 78% of all survey participants know what a payday lender is, but 90% of them actually don't know about the negative consequences it can have on Pacifica, which more specifically is that these businesses take away $50,000 away from local funds per year. And that's per establishment. There are 3 in Pacifica. So that sums up to be $150,000 at least. And so these funds could be going to other departments of Pacifica, like schools or other institutions or other projects that the city might be working on. Council, if you have any more questions on this, please refer to the educational packet that Eduardo provided for you back in January during the goal-setting meeting.
Based on our findings, payday lenders are targeting, or more precisely, disproportionately affecting those of low income, and that is because, procedurally speaking, of their requirements being of little to no credit checks, those of low income are more likely to take out a loan from a payday lender, and that is with people low income being more likely to have poor debt, as opposed to someone of higher income having a relatively better credit, and which has them more likely to take out a loan from more healthier financial service.
So just like there's a connection between low-income people and payday loans, the interns at YLI from Samuel Merritt helped us see another connection, in which payday loans lead to chronic debt, which in turn leads to chronic stress. And this would put you at a higher risk for these diseases displayed above. Through the public opinion surveys we conducted, the people we surveyed conducted the connection between financial stress and a person's health. The most surprising finding was that suicide and hypertension were among the highest risks.
So don't get played, get paid. And here are some healthy alternatives. For starters, borrow from your friends and family instead, and also get financial education here in Pacifica. But before that, we have to advocate for it. And this can include things such as credit counseling, or just knowing how each banking institution works, and then knowing the after effects it can have on your future.
Something else you can do is to take use of healthier financial services, such as banking with credit unions, which involve the San Mateo Credit Union, and also getting aid from the Pacifica Resource Center with getting out of the debt cycle through getting aid with setting up a savings account. The council and audience, our most surprising and affirming statistic is that 88% of those surveyed support policy change regarding protecting Pacificans with placing limits on payday lenders.
So now what can be done? Well, for starters, we can educate our friends and family about the predatory financial services we've talked about today.
You can also advocate for healthy alternatives to payday lenders, such as encouraging people to bank with credit unions, as well as encouraging people to get aid from the Pacifica Resource Center.
And council, we deeply hope that you consider an ordinance to protect Pacifica from these payday lenders that prey on your people's debt. Thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for the speakers? Sue Degree?
Thank you very much for the hard work, and keep it up for protecting our residents. Thank you very much.
Deirdre?
Thank you. That's very eye-opening, especially the statistics of who knows what about these financial institutions, and also the effects on our health. And 88% of the Pacificans, or people who are at our shopping centers, would support a policy change. I'd also support that policy change, and I'd like to suggest that we get it on a future agenda so that we look at an ordinance to maybe put a cap on any additional payday lenders opening up, And then if any close, that max becomes lowered. Right now we have 3. If one were to close, maybe it would just be 2. So I'd like to suggest that we put that on a future agenda for consideration, working with city attorney on some ordinance.
Sue Vaterlaus?
I just had a question. You said $50,000 is taken away from other places that could benefit Pacifica. Can you explain that?
So that's from the local economy here in Pacifica, and so I assume the economy here is meant to fund other projects of Pacifica, like schools or just other city projects that you might be working on. But instead, this is being taken away from these establishments instead.
Okay. And I do agree, it's a vicious cycle that people get in, and they keep on borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, and it's not healthy.
John?
Oh.
Ma'am? You don't believe your the speaker, is she with your group, or? Okay, and then if you want to come to the microphone, they can hear you on TV.
So for every dollar that gets loaned from a payday loan, 24 cents is the interest. So that interest stays with the payday loan. So like in all the 8 cycles that a person gets into typically, it amounts to about $10.80 for the interest that is kept. So if you keep on multiplying that by like all this time, then you end up with that number of like $54,000 that is kept in the interest versus, for example, a credit union that it's more based on like membership, and then that the money stays within the community.
Thank you.
Okay, and John?
Yeah. Great presentation. I would support an ordinance also, like Deirdre mentioned, and we look forward to considering that. Thank you.
I have a question. I think when I met with you guys quite a while ago, maybe 6-7 months ago, and you were going to approach the schools about trying to get some sort of financial literacy in the curriculum. Have you had any success doing that? Because I do know that the high school district is cutting out home economics now. So I don't even, are they going to be able to get any sort of financial literacy? Have you approached them?
Currently, our focus is on payday lenders, but that could definitely be our next step.
Okay, okay. And I also have no problem with examining an ordinance. And have you reached out to other communities to get sample ordinances for our city attorney to review, or
Yeah, they're working on it.
I asked them. Have you reached out to them and to get some sample ordinances? Okay, okay. So I guess the staff has direction from council to look at that and explore the different options. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I know you guys have been working on this for quite a while, and I also commend you for wanting to take the initiative on that. So thank you very much.
And thank you for your time.
Thanks. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Persons wishing to address the council on any consent calendar item may do so at this time. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. Those wishing to address the council on any item listed on the agenda should submit a speaker card to the city clerk. Items on the consent calendar will be adopted by one motion unless a council member or person in the audience requests before the vote on the motion to have an item discussed. Time limit on comments is 3 minutes or less. So is there any council that wants?
Yes. 5, 6, and 8, and 5 will be quick, and 6 will be a little less quick, and 8 will be a little less quick than that.
Okay, did you just want to ask a quick question for 5?
Yeah.
And keep it on the consent?
Yeah, or a comment, really. So item 5 is bilateral acknowledgement and easement agreement between the City of Pacifica and AFG Investment Group pertaining to the Sharp Park Library properties. And I just want to explain very briefly what this is. The City of Pacifica owns that land and the library, but there's an easement going through it to an apartment complex behind the library. And what this resolution would do, and the AFG Investment Group apparently agrees with it, is make that a floating easement. That is, the city can move or change the easement as it chooses, and this will give us flexibility for whatever future uses we have. So it's a good thing, and I support it.
I think just as a follow-up, maybe for the city manager, city attorney, I know at one point the sale of that property was part of the financing for the library. This easement will then go to the new owner also. Do we have the right to transfer the easement for the apartments?
Tina can answer that.
Oh, Tina, okay. I knew, third strike, and third call, and I got it.
Tina Wermeister, I'm the planning director. I think to answer your question is, if the easement, for example, was to be on the side of the property immediately adjacent to the apartments, there is always the option to do a lot line adjustment and actually make the easement part of the apartment's property in the future. And so then, we don't really need the easement anymore. But yes, we could do that if that's how the development plan works out.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you, Tina. Any other council member want to pull something? Items 6 and 8 are pulled. Anybody, anything else?
Just wanted to comment also, I was struck by 5. So, in reading it, I'm consoling myself that we are not giving up the store, as it were, that we're protecting both sides, and that we also have an exit clause that either side agrees on a change. That can happen. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the remaining consent calendars. Sue Vaterlos?
Motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of items 6 and 8.
Second.
Okay, please vote. That item, the consent calendar passes minus items 6 and 8, 5-0. Okay, the next is item 6, and John, you pulled it, and then we do have a oral comment on 6, so we'll let you speak and then take the oral comment.
We'll take the oral comment first.
Okay. Bridget Duffy, you have number 6, so I'm assuming that's for the consent calendar.
Hi, I wrote a little booklet today because a neighbor of mine was tearing down a big, hill of greenery, which looks like weeds, and many trees look like trees we don't want. But the booklet basically is to just raise the consciousness of everybody as to the greenhouse gases and the effect on planet Earth, small blue planet that we live on. It's serious. We have leopard sharks dying in the bay. There's just innumerable issues coming up around it. Not cutting things down is a good thing. It's one of the things that we can do that will remedy the situation, because all green things filter out carbons from the air. So I know it's all of the things I talk about sound like really crazy, but the truth is we really do need to start thinking about remedying what's going on in our atmosphere. And cutting trees down and the whole way we view vegetation right now, I think needs another look. And I'm always advocating for a new city plan a new city plan that includes the information that we have today about the environment that we did not have 40 years ago. So, anyway. And take me off of 8, because I think it was just a repeat.
Oh, remove you from 8? Okay. John?
I just have a couple questions. So, Van, first of all, how are trees chosen to be on the list? There's, and I should mention, there's a list of trees that have various things done to them, from pruning to removal of the stumps, et cetera. And I was just curious.
Right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Van Ocampo. I'm the Director of Public Works. With me tonight is our City Arborist, Aaron Clark. Just to answer your question, Mayor Pro Tem Keener, what the city does is we have a professional arborist, outside consultant that actually does an evaluation of the city trees in Pacifica, which ranks the trees, like a tree survey is done with the city, and then it ranks the trees on which ones need the most attention. And then with Aaron being a certified arborist too, you know, he basically reviews the work and works with that guide towards prioritizing which trees need certain attention. This is in an effort to reduce damage or claims that we may receive during winter season.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I wondered, you know, what the criteria were then.
That's what the criteria
is. That's what it is. And the second question is, are the trees on public or private property, or, you know?
The trees are, they're called city trees. They're within our public right-of-way. There is a section here that says open space, and those are the ones that are within city-owned property. They're the parks, the ones that are not really the street itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Van, I just wanted to clarify a question.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
I mean, last year we had a tree fall down on a house on Zamora, but that was a private tree, so other than like an emergency thing for the fire to go there and police and stuff like that, this contract would not cover that, correct?
That is correct. Oftentimes what happens is during emergencies like that, our task is to clear the street so that it becomes passable, so that if there's an emergency for the houses that's beyond that, they'll still be able to use the street. So our crew will respond towards cutting the tree right at the property line, whatever limb is protruding onto the street, to make the street possible.
Right, and I can now at this point think of about 3 or 4 instances where we have not necessarily all city-owned, but different trees fall on houses, correct? Fortunately, we've not had anybody killed.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for the public, that sometimes these trees do have to come down, because if I remember correctly, most of the Valimar trees are aged out. They're beyond their life expectancy, correct?
A lot of them are, yes.
Yeah, yeah, okay. And you think Davy does a good job?
Again, please?
You think Davy does a good job?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Right. All right, thank you. And then item number 8, or do we want to take a vote on 6 and then go to 8? I do want to say something on 8. Okay.
We could.
Yeah. Oh, you want to say something on 8? Oh, okay.
And we can vote on them both at the same time, I think.
Okay. Okay. So, John, you pulled item 8?
Yeah, let her go ahead again.
Okay. Bridget?
Sort of along on that note, this is about the creek and the issue we're having there, from what I understand. And one of the new ways people are dealing with issues such as these is letting creek areas go back to creek. And I know that sounds crazy. You'd have to either tunnel under the freeway underneath the creek, or you'd have to do some kind of overpass for the creek. But they're having incredibly good results with land being restored back to...
Bridget, it's not related to item 8. That would be more oral communications.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
when I call for oral, after Tiger, then you can come up. Okay, so, John.
Okay. But my questions do relate to item 8.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just, but it wasn't related to item 8.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. So, item 8 is, an approval of agreement for consultant services for the wastewater plant and pump stations condition assessment, right? And so I have, half a dozen questions here. I'll just sort of go through them, and I don't think they're in any logical order. So, I'm curious as to the age of the wastewater plant and of the pump stations. Can you give me any idea on that?
The wastewater treatment plant, the plant that we have at the Calera Creek Water Recycling Plant, just to be specific, is 17 years old now.
Okay.
The age of the pump stations, to be honest with you, I don't have that, because some of the, like for example, the pump stations at Lindamar, they have been a pump station while the treatment plant was at this location. So,
the pump station here was obviously here when the...
Yeah, the pump station here was created. This became a pump station when the Calera Creek Water Recycling Plant,
right.
became operational, because all the pipes that are coming into this location have to be pumped towards that location. The one to the south, they really have to be. I mean, they were in existence. I would say about 20 years, or 30 years or more.
Okay. Where are the 6 pumping plants? I mean...
The 5 pump stations, are you saying?
Well, the staff report said there were 6, and that threw me. How many pump stations are there? Let's put it that way.
There are a total of 7, and 2 of them are storm drain related, and 5 are sewer. So you have the Lindamar pump station, you have Rockaway Beach, you have Brighton. Councilmember Keener, there's a small one right at the where Sky Ridge subdivision is. There's a small pump station there as well.
Where? What is?
Sky Ridge subdivision.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of the newer ones that we have.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings it up to 5. And the 2 storm drain ones, just out of curiosity, one is at Lindamar.
And the other one is at ANSA.
Okay, great. So when was the last inspection, or was there ever an inspection comparable to what is contemplated in this agreement?
For the Calera Creek Water Recycling Plant, they'll be like the first. Yeah. The first that is overall. But if, let's say, for some reason there's a failure on a certain section, we do address that. We have our structural engineers look at that. But this one is overall, because like what I mentioned during the budget presentation that we had for for the wastewater division, our goal is to be more proactive with regards to addressing these issues, so that we can, prevention is better than cure.
Yeah. So, it seems like constantly we see items generally on the consent calendar for a new centrifuge rotor or something like that for the treatment plant. And I assume that that's what you mean by the sort of
that is correct.
ad hoc inspections and
yeah, although this particular one will also look at the different walls that for our SBRs and all stuff, if there are any evidences where you have rust coming through, which means that the rebar is getting exposed, those type of things, cracks. That's why this is more on the structure itself, not just on the equipments, whether that be a pump or what.
Will they inspect the equipment also in this, for this?
The major equipments, yes.
Assessment?
I mean, the major equipments, yes, but
yeah, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Major ones, okay.
Okay. And this is a little bit beyond this item, but how would you make the decision for repairing versus moving versus, you know, a new pump station?
Well, what you do is you try to figure out what are the things that you will have to revise. Like, for example, if you're looking at relocating a pump station, you have to take into consideration all the pipes that lead to that pump station. And they're very costly. And in addition to that, because we're talking about sewer, sewer is by gravity for most part. So if you're going to do that, you have to look at the distance compared to the elevation, how much flow it is. That's why relocating a pump station is, you know, oftentimes not ideal. You know, you have to have, you know, a huge reason like there's constant flooding in that area. That's why it would necessitate that. And also you look at other things, like, for example, if you're looking at new technologies right now, the pipes that we have that convey sewer from one location to the other, what you use is the fuse pipe. They're like joined together, so they're like sealed. So, you know, that helps a lot because nothing can get in, you know.
Yeah. So I was thinking in terms of sea level rise, and, you know, we have at least 2 or 3 pump stations that would be threatened by sea level rise. We don't know when, but it will happen sometime.
That is correct. And
I just wondered how to factor that into the economic assessment. But you bring up a good point in that it involves the sewer mains and pipes and so on as well.
That is correct.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other council questions regarding items 6 or 8? Okay, and no more public comment cards, so I need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve items 6 and 8 on the consent calendar.
Sue Vaterlaus?
Second.
Please vote. And items 6 and 8 pass 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is oral communications. And this portion of the agenda is available for the public to address the City Council on any issue that is not on the agenda. Any person wishing to address the council shall be recognized by the mayor during oral communications, provided, however, that during the oral communications portion of the agenda, only items not on the agenda for that meeting may be addressed. All remarks shall be addressed to the council as a body and not to any member thereof. Council members shall not enter into debate with speakers under oral communications. A maximum time of 3 minutes will be allowed for any speaker pursuant to Pacifica Municipal Code Title II, Chapter 1, Section 2-1.118. Any person making impertinent, slanderous, or profane remarks or who becomes boisterous while addressing the council shall be called to order by the presiding officer, and if such conduct continues, may, at the direction of the presiding officer, be ordered barred from the further audience before the council during the meeting. Okay, oral communications. I have four cards. First up is Tiger.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I am Tiger Jestrels, Big Stick of Pacifica. I was asked to speak tonight. Anita Reese, the director of the Pacifica Resource Center, couldn't be here, so she just asked me to say a few words about our first annual Palmapalooza that's going to be going on August 19th, freshly printed poster. And thanks to the planning department in the city, we're going to be having it right here in the parking lot right outside council chambers. It's going to be a great event. We'll have a Ferris wheel that's going to be open to the public at 5 o'clock, and the event for those who wish to make a contribution of $75 will be open at 6 o'clock. So if you just want to check out what the Resource Center is about and have fun we'll have that Ferris wheel available, and otherwise it's a great event. We also wanted to thank the community for your sponsorships and pledges, and thank you if you've pledged. We're looking forward to that contribution, and if you've already sent it in, thank you so much. It's due to your contributions that we're able to keep helping those amongst us, our very neighbors who need help. We serve at least 1 in 10 Pacificans, and frankly, 1 out of 5 are eligible for our help. So we're truly helping our neighbors through every contribution that comes through the Pacifica Resource Center, and this is going to be a really fun event come August 19th. So everybody show up just for the Ferris wheel and to say hi, find out about us and what we're doing, maybe sign up for volunteering, and if you can afford a little bit more, it's going to be a great event that night. Lots of fun, and thank you very much.
Okay, next item on the agenda, Bridget Duffy. Hey. This time will be good.
Hello, and I love that idea. We should have a fun thing outside every Friday night to raise money for the Resource Center. Anyway, what I was going to say, which I think would have been more appropriate at the last one, was they're coming up with really new ideas about how to deal with sewerage, and the chemicals that currently are what we use to deal with our sewage, and the standard traditional sewage is part of what's killing our oceans and other affecting water. So anyway, that's what I was going to say. I think that any money spent at this juncture, at this time in history, should be money well placed for a future that is sustainable. That being said, what I wanted to say during oral communications is that, you know, I feel like our democracy is at risk right now in our country. Our democracy is at risk in Pacifica, partially because we have a public that is uninformed and unengaged. My postman just got an eviction, like many other people in Pacifica. He has to be out by October, coincidentally, and there's something on the ballot in November. This is outrageous that this is continuing to go on without any help from our government, but what I would like to ask for, and I will ask for it over and over again, is we need a town hall meeting. We need the facts to be laid bare to the public about this issue. We cannot just let ourselves be vulnerable to the money in the real estate industry that is going to try to wipe this possibility out for us. So in order to create a more engaged and informed public, I would hope and pray that we change the way we could change all kinds of things. We can do anything we want. This is a very people-unfriendly, it's not really working. It's people coming up and blaring at you, and there's no comeback from you guys, and we don't know what the truth is and what the not truth is, and it's just, it's not how democracy thrives. And we have a chance to have a thriving democracy, at least here in Pacifica. And I would encourage everybody that's involved in the government, all the citizens of Pacifica, to take it very, very, very seriously. We can be a self-determining people here with democracy, but only with democracy. So, town hall meeting, town hall meeting.
Ian Butler, and then after Ian, Victor Spano. And Victor's is the last card I
have. Good evening, Council. So anybody that's my Facebook friend knows that my favorite thing to do is to correct wrong information. So I'm going to do the same thing in the City Council forum as well. I was at a meeting here a month ago, and Councilwoman Vaderlas made a statement that surprised me about sea level rise. And I actually went on the PCT recording, and this is what her statement verbatim is this. She said, "I also attended the sea level rise meeting, and I think the best thing that I heard was a quote from Gary Griggs at UC Santa Cruz, an expert on sea level rise, who said Pacifica doesn't have a sea level rise problem, they have a coastal erosion problem. At a maximum, the sea level rise is 3 millimeters a year, which equates with about 1/8 of an inch. So he was saying at the maximum, it could raise about 13 inches in 100 years. So that didn't really seem right to me. So I managed to email Gary Griggs, and I got a response from him, and I want to read that verbatim as well. So by the way, this is the climate scientist that was at the Sea Level Rise Forum. He said, Sue Vaterlos did not accurately portray what I presented, and I'll try to clarify. The present rate of global sea level rise is about 3 millimeters a year, which is the equivalent of about 13 inches in 100 years. The rate has been determined very precisely from satellites over the past 24 years and is about 3 times as fast as the rate calculated over the past century from averaging tide gauges. My presentation was that the great majority of climate sea level rise scientists believe that this will increase in the years ahead, and the uncertainties are only in the rate of that increase. At present, based on this and other studies, we believe the best estimate of sea level rise by 2100 is 2.5 feet to 3.5 feet, not 13 inches, and it may be even higher, Gary. So you can see that's a big disparity. And, you know, we have, these days in this country, we have Scott Pruitt is the head of the EPA, who's a climate denier, and, you know, we have, in this community, I think we take this kind of stuff very seriously, and I think it's important that we use actual facts and we stick to what the scientists say and try to not portray them in any way except the scientifically valid ones. So I just want to make sure that that's corrected, and you know, we're going to be planning for sea level rise. I know the county is talking about planning for like 6 feet of sea level rise because that's kind of within the range of what's possible. So if we're planning for 13 inches, we would make the wrong decisions. But if we're planning for 6 feet, then I think we will be, you know, be able to properly protect ourselves from, you know, as we know, Pacific is the poster child for coastal erosion, so we need to have the correct facts. So I hope that the council and the public can now know the truth about what the scientists have to say about that. Thank you.
Victor Spano, and Victor's is the last card, so we'll close oral communications after him.
Hi, I'm Victor from the Pacifica Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to invite the council and the community to our upcoming events. This Thursday at 2:30, grand opening at Curry and Kebab at Fairmont Shopping Center at 2:30. On August 11th, Trip Distillery, they will be having a grand opening party and mixer at 4:30 p.m. On August 14th at US Bank, we will have an Aspiring Entrepreneurs Mixer, co-sponsored by US Bank. And finally, on August 16th at 3 o'clock in the Eureka Square Shopping Center, Royal Bee Yarn Company will be having a grand opening. You can read about all our events on our website, pacificachamber.com. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I have no other cards for oral communications. Okay, moving on to council communications. Purpose of council communications is for council members to inform each other of items of potential interest to other council members, such as interagency meetings. Anybody have any cards? Sue Vaterlos.
I attended the Library Advisory Committee, and we went over acceptable sites for the library, kept some on the list, and eliminated others. It was a good meeting to attend. I also went to City and County Association of Governments, both their regular meeting and the legislative meeting, and they mostly discussed the transportation funds that we were going to get, and on that particular day, they were going to eliminate a lot of San Mateo funds, but the people from CCAG and the government helped to get the funds back for us for transportation, so that was really good. I did talk to several people regarding the Roberts Road litter situation, and as I understand, there are now 2 cans on Roberts Road, so hopefully people will deposit their trash in the cans, and we'll see how that goes. A lot of people have comments about Roberts Road. I attended the union dinner honoring Mike Lagamarcino, who is a local Pacifican who got an award for many, many years working with the union, and the San Mateo City Council got an award for minimum wage and being the first to raise the minimum wage. Also attended Jackie Spear at the Democrats meeting, and then at Terra Nova, she discussed the health care along with Jerry Hill and Kevin Mullen, and that was an interesting meeting. A lot of people present. And then the Relay for Life, the Cancer Walk, which was a really great event. And I believe the last count on Sunday was they had raised about $66,000. And that's really incredible for our small event that we have here. And I'd like to see everyone attend next time. Thanks.
Okay, Sue Green.
Right, that is always a great event, and they did raise the highest amount so far, and I think it actually got to 70,000. And I want to thank also our Public Works folks. This is definitely a community event. It's very comforting for those who have family members or are suffering from cancer. So agreed, if you can at all get there next year, do so. I'll check that one off. But also, I want to make sure that our young folks who participate in the sports and Little League get a heads up. They may have all over social media, and they were in the Tribune on the 15th, I think. But the Pacifica American Little League's postseason had a magical ride. It came to an end, however, last Wednesday, but they fought really well. After winning the District 52 All-State Championship 2 weeks ago, they went on and played really hard, but didn't quite make the next step. However, that, as we know, who are parents and coaches, that is a lot of hard work on the part of the athletes, the coaches, and the families. And it's also a community event, which brings a lot of community sense to all of us. They won the District 52 tournament. Pacifica now has won 11 district championships, which is the most of all competing peninsula teams. And that's, as I said, a lot of hard work on the part of young people and their families and coaches. So the good old San Francisco Roundtable for the airport noise. So we have, I think I mentioned that we were having our legislative subcommittee, which we did, and we will be presenting on August the 2nd, which is the first Wednesday of August, and it's at the Chakotay Center right by the Millbrae Library at 7 p.m. So we will be presenting our thoughts on that. Part of it will be, and has already started, a professor down in Los Angeles has contacted us and saying that Los Angeles Roundtable is also very active. So our goal is to support our legislators who have been comprehending and appreciating how noise does negatively impact our residents, and by getting, just having a few congresspersons active is not going to be good enough. We already know that. So we're hoping that the whole committee will agree with us and go forth towards the whole nation to find other roundtables, and more importantly, the grassroots. As in our roundtable, there's grassroots here in Pacifica and in every other city. And so by that way, getting to the public to go after their congressional persons so that we actually get a majority vote in Congress. So the fact that people are suffering and it is a negative health doesn't need any more study. Our point of view is that it's already known. Let's do something about it. And we have already been talking about it, I think, 2 years, and that was supposed to be a crisis. So our definition of soon, we would like to pin it down to something more realistic from the point of view of solutions. So also written a draft letter, which our regular city attorney I've been keeping her up to date on everything, and so she will be looking at that. So one of my goals for that coming up, which couldn't be for this meeting, which will be for our August, what's the August date? 14th, is Council, what would you like to do? So we'll know more what the SFO Roundtable will be doing because we're meeting on August 3rd. What would the city like to do? I'm assuming that the Roundtable is going to be proactive, so I'm assuming we will want to support the Roundtable in every way we can, but is there anything else that the local city would like to engage in? And so we can be brainstorming about what would that look like. So that's coming, I assume, on August 14th. So small businesses, we're hearing both in our city, which is our primary concern, is that small businesses are going out of business because of high rents. And I've been talking about how do we, for years now, how do we really help our small businesses? So I'm really going to be pushing hard for this, is that what can we do for our small businesses to really support them, again, the point of view of quickly rather than more talk, more bureaucracy. Let's find a way of doing it. So I'm asking that it be agendized so that council could maybe give it a little bit of a more kickstart. And whatever that would be, I'm not quite sure. But I do think we need to be listening more actively and thinking more collectively as to how to protect small businesses, which has been said for years is the backbone of the United States, and yet it looks like the big corporations are going to be able to outbuy, or corporations like Kimco as a stock. They are going to just be raising rents like crazy, so small businesses just can't possibly make it. So I think we need to look at that and whether or not small businesses are something, you know, that's part of us and that we're going to commit to. Also, looking back, since I'm the oldie on council, looking back on how getting elected is not easy. Staying elected is not easy. Doing things, making these decisions up here is not always a breeze either. And so I would like to evaluate, so when electeds make decisions, let's pick on a few things. One of them was the clock tower, for example. That was not an easy decision to go for that size. The other one was Harmony One, and also the Rickley Fassler, the two Fassler ones. So we worked really hard, and particularly with Harmony, there was a lot of work from the community itself. And you turn around and find out, hey, what happened? What we voted on somehow has been changed. And it didn't come before council because being the oldie around here, I was here. So I would like to find out what it is in the process. I'm assuming it's in the language when we vote on something that says we will delegate the next step to the decision of either administratively for planning, not trying to pick on planning, or the planning commission. And they may not at all have any clue as to what went on for the electeds at the particular time. And do we need to say things can be passed on for 2 years rather than 3, 6, 7 years where everybody and his brother may forget, although the community doesn't forget. So for example, in the clock tower, we spent a lot of time, and there was supposed to be a state-of-the-art kitchen in there. We voted on that. I know, I haven't reached senility yet. But when I go looking for it, I get a blank look, like, what are you talking about? So I'm asking, council, can we please agendize, let's figure out, because whatever the council is in existence, they vote on something with a lot of hard work and the public input. I'd like to see that if there's going to be any change to what that council voted on, should come before the next existing council, so the existing public and council at the time has something to weigh on it. So I don't think I'm out of order on here. I think I'm correct in those things that I've mentioned. So you can throw tomatoes at me later. I also like to see that I've been picky about this thing, that the city stay in close contact with Caltrans, for example. And for one thing, if staff could come back, for example, that slide by the Orchids place and Highway 1, is that the national park issue? Is that Caltrans issue? It isn't ours because we would be doing something. So whose issue is it? And we should be talking about it. And when I say we should be talking about it, I think council should know what those conversations are. So I'm asking council to be a little picky and proactive in saying, we want to hear about the discussions with Caltrans. Are we on top of things? Coastal Conservancy, we're in union with them for a park at the bottom of Manor. That's been talked about for 7 years or more. Where are we with that? I mean, there could be really, I know there are good reasons, but what are they? I think the existing council needs to be able to hear it. HCD, this for affordable housing, once again, they're coming back from the mobile home park. What's all that about? I really think the existing council needs to be apprised of that on an ongoing way. So if I could be complaining about all that stuff. What else? I think I'll let it go for now. I think I've been complaining enough. Not
Okay.
meaning to be complaining, just want to be proactive.
Done? Okay. Deirdre?
So I just returned from vacation, so any of the community members who have emailed me in the past week and a half or so, please bear with me. I'm playing catch up. If it wasn't an emergency, I didn't reply. I want to congratulate Pacifica's environmental family for a successful Kahuna Kapuna surf contest this weekend. I heard it was a beautiful day and lots of fun had by all. I also just wanted to thank the Chamber of Commerce for meeting with the Pacifica Beach Coalition and letting them give their presentation to the board on their anti-cigarette butt litter campaign. So they're going to be partnering up, and that's a pretty exciting opportunity for both the businesses and the Pacifica Beach Coalition. So I want to say thank you. And also, just to follow up on the Roberts Road thing, they did install 235-gallon cans today. And we just want to ask the community to keep your eyes on it. We want to make sure that no dumping starts to happen. Our Public Works and park rangers will be picking up on a regular basis. And this is, a new route for them. So bear with us, but keep your eyes out as well. And I also, just in the last few days, heard about some more robberies. And I just want to reiterate what everybody already knows. But if you see something, say something, ask questions. If there's a stranger in your neighborhood, talk to them, let them know that you're watching your neighborhood too. So that's all I have. Thanks.
John?
Yeah. So I've gotten a few questions about the rent stabilization ordinance, and I think they're new questions, at least not addressed in the FAQ that is on the city website. And the question is, will renters receiving Section 8 housing vouchers from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, that's HUD, be subject to the rent stabilization ordinance? And after careful reading and talking to several folks, what I think is, in general, yes, assuming that the folks that are receiving the vouchers are not renting a single-family home. That is not subject to the ordinance, or townhouse, condo, or whatever, or in a government-owned building. And so the last one is probably key. And I'd like the city attorney, that's Michelle, I think, to review this, see that I've got the correct answer, and add this to the FAQ on the website. And also, I've gotten several questions about where to download the rent stabilization ordinance, and the answer is simple. That is on the city website. On the front page, they have a link to, a page that is exclusively about the rent stabilization initiative, and there's a place you can download the ordinance right there. Another thing, I would like to propose that the city clerk would post on the website each resolution and ordinance passed by the City Council and the Planning Commission. And the reason I say that is that they're sometimes, or maybe even often, different than what you find in the agenda. So I wonder if that would be possible, and if it would take an act of council to do that, or if you could just do it, or whatever. And the third thing is regards to Carl Baldwin, Sue DeGree and I went by his house about 2 weeks ago or so, maybe a week and a half. He was the first city manager of Pacifica, right? And he's 92 now, and he and his wife are moving up to Bellingham, Washington, and he was, just an incredibly nice gentleman, and so, I asked him what were some of the difficult issues that you faced back at the beginning of Pacifica, and he said that at the very first city council meeting, the city had no money. Now, that sounds familiar to us because, we're always saying we have no money. They literally had no money. They had like zero. And that was, they would, their first city council meeting must have been in late November or December of 62?
57 is when it was incorporated.
57? Yeah. And so he said what they did at the first city council meeting was pass an ordinance that for a business tax. And then they had a little to go on while they waited for the property tax and so on to come their way, which it did, I'm sure probably next July 1st. And I just thought that was a fascinating bit of perspective. So there you go.
I actually had someone call and ask me about the Section 8 housing, and I have already checked with Michelle to give an answer. And Section 8 is subject to the rent control. So Casa Pacifica and I don't know of any other Section 8s in town, but they are subject to rent control. And then just asking a clarification question. Kathy, when you post the approved minutes of a meeting, you do have the revised, any revisions to a resolution or ordinance on that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The minutes that you approve are the ones that are posted on the website, the web portal, where you see the agenda packets. So, yeah.
It would have if there's revisions to an ordinance or whatever, it would be on the agenda minutes, correct?
Yes, it would.
Okay, so John, are you asking for a special section of resolutions and ordinances, or just?
Yeah.
I think Mr. Keener is asking for just maybe a file for resolutions and ordinances for the current year or.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to ask that.
The final ones that get fully executed.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that. And I don't really, we weren't on vacation together, but I was also on vacation for 2 weeks, so Deirdre and I don't have much to say to you. But I think we're in two different ends of the country. I was in Alaska and she was back east. So anyhow, staff communications? I mean, there's nothing else from council? Okay. Staff communications?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, so now we go on to public hearings. During public hearings, an applicant or their agent and appellants have 10 minutes for their opening presentation and 3 minutes for rebuttal before the public hearing is closed. Members of the public are limited to 3 minutes. So item number 10, conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution confirming the annual report from the Pacifica Hotel Business Improvement District. Staff report?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at the City Council meeting 2 weeks ago, you set the public hearing for tonight on the Hotel Business Improvement District. This district has been in place for a number of years. It's an imposition of a $1 per night levy on every occupied hotel room, funds going to the Chamber of Commerce. And there are representatives here from the Chamber who are available to speak should you have any questions, both on the use of the funds in the past year and the anticipated use in the coming year. And with that, turn it back to you.
Okay, is there any questions from council? And is there going to, I have no cards. Is there going to be any speakers from the BID? I don't see anybody running to the podium, so I assume there's no speakers. Does council have any questions?
Are they going to present us with what the disbursements were?
I saw two people from the chamber here, but they're not coming up. Okay, now they are. One is. Okay.
Apologize, we turned in the report several weeks ago, so I thought you'd all seen it already. No? No? Did they get the report? Do they have the report?
The report was included at the last City Council agenda with the resolution of intent to schedule this public hearing tonight.
Okay. Okay. So
Sorry.
Are you, Sue? No, I just want, are you done, Sue Vatterlaus?
Fine.
Okay, Sue Degree?
I don't need an answer tonight, but the Visitor Bureau, which I believe I know is presently with the Chamber, get a lot of requests, and I sympathize with it for being open on the weekends. So if we could have that addressed at some future meeting.
You'd like it to be open on the weekends?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
I'll definitely discuss it with the board of directors.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
John? Used to call him Sue.
It's two Sues, and may as well be three. Yeah, I would second Sue's request that the Chamber of Commerce Board consider staying open on the weekends if they possibly can.
Okay.
I get the same thing occasionally, people wondering why they aren't open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any recommendations on hours of operation?
I know they used to be open on weekends, but I know budget concerns, because that was actually being paid for by the Chamber's own budget, not the BID. And so, you know, I don't know. I think it was something like 10 to 2, 10 to 4, something like that. I know it was a part-time.
Certainly budgets will have to be taken into
Yeah, I
consideration.
think 10 to 4 or something like that. I'm thinking of, you know, folks coming to town and, you know, that is a portal for the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And so, you know, trying to find out some information about that, or beaches, or, you know, people on the weekends just coming to town and stopping by and thinking, you know, I'd like to do a little recreation of some sort here in Pacifica, and what do you have? Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I think the city was actually helping to subsidize that.
That is true at one point.
Yeah, the city
was. And at that point, we were able to staff a person on the weekend, but without those funds, it's definitely more difficult.
Right. So I think at that point the city was right, and I think it was $10,000 or $15,000 a year subsidizing the chamber, and that was one of the budget cuts. The same year we cut the library hours. So.
But we still do take in visitors often, as you know. You've actually helped some of our visitors when you've been by visiting. Thank you for that.
Right. So, okay. So do we want to thank you
You're
very much. Does somebody want to make a motion to accept this resolution? Deirdre?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution confirming the annual report of the Pacifica Hotel Business Improvement District Advisory Board and continuing the assessments levied in 2016-17 without change in fiscal year 2017-18.
Is it dying for lack of a second? Oh, okay. Sue Vatterlaus. Okay. I did want to clarify something for the public too, is that the city really has no control over this money. We are merely acting as the fiscal / collection agency for this. Each hotel charges $1 per room per night. It goes into a fund. When they remit their tot tax, it comes to the city, and we cut a check to the chamber, who is the manager of the BI, Business Improvement District, chosen by the hotel, since it is their money. So I just wanted to clarify that what our relationship is with this. So vote, please. And that motion passes 5-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is agenda item 11, proposed resolution of the City Council of the City of Pacifica accepting the report of sewer service charges for fiscal year 17-18 and directing the filing of charges for collection by the county controller. And there we have the team.
Good evening, Mayor O'Neill, members of the Pacifica City Council. My name is Lorenzo Hines. I'm the Assistant City Manager. To my left is Director Van Ocampo. To his left is Louis Sun, the Deputy Director of the Wastewater Treatment Program. So we're here tonight to present the proposed resolution accepting the report of sewer service charges for fiscal year 2017-18 and directing the filing of charges for collection by the county controller. Now, back on May 8th, the City Council approved Ordinance 816-CS, which enacted a new 5-year rate structure with a maximum annual rate increase for the city's wastewater program for fiscal years 2017-18 through 2021-22. A second reading of the ordinance was conducted and approved at the May 22nd, 2017 meeting. The ordinance essentially amended sections 6-6.404 through 6-6.408 of Chapter 6, Title 6, Sewer Charges of the Pacifica Municipal Code. The revenues generated by these rates are the main source of revenue for the city's wastewater program and address its future capital and financial needs. This resolution implements the city service charges for fiscal year 17-18 and reflects a rate increase of 8% above the 2016-17 rates. The 8% increase is based on the following: anticipated 2017-18 expenditures for the operations, maintenance, repair, and management of the city's wastewater program, creating a reserve for contingencies, which funds operations and maintenance costs for 90 days, supports the construction of the city's wet weather equalization basin project, including the built-in contingency, and construction of other wastewater capital projects, and providing the wastewater enterprise fund with an appropriate debt service coverage, essentially net operating revenue over debt service payments. The resolution indicates that the maximum increase is 8%. However, implementing a lower annual increase would not yield enough cash flow to fully fund the financial goals listed above. The new rate structure and our 2017-18 rate proposal are supported by a detailed rate study conducted by Bartle Wells, dated March 17th, March 2017, which we presented to Council. These charges have been calculated in accordance with the municipal code and applied to each parcel. Applied to each parcel, and the report itself is kept on file in the Finance Department at City Hall. The overall fiscal impact of these rates will be about $13.6 million, and it's reflected in the 2017-18 budget. These are dollars necessary to run the operations of the wastewater treatment program. And with that, we are open to any questions.
Is there any questions from council? Okay. Yeah, John.
Just to clarify, this is for the next fiscal year only, and then next year we'll have to approve it again for the following year. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
this will be an annual exercise. Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Deirdre just asked if there was any comment. Okay. Questions. I just want to be sure you knew. Okay, I have no cards on this item. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Okay, seeing no one, I close the public hearing. Okay, John?
I'd like to make a motion if council is amenable. I move that to adopt the proposed resolution of the City Council of the City of Pacifica accepting the report of the sewer service charges for fiscal year 2017, 2018, and directing the filing of charges for the collection by the county controller.
Sue Vaterhaus.
Second.
Comment? Vote, please. Okay, and that item passes 5-0 unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is agenda item, I lost count here, hold on, let's see. 11, yes. Agenda item 11, which is proposed resolution of the City Council, no, we're on 12. Okay, appoint 2 council members to a local coastal plan update and ad hoc subcommittee. Council discussion? Oh, first staff report, yes. Sorry, Tina.
Fine, I was really just going to kind of just summarize the written staff report. My name is Tina Warmeister, I'm the planning director. And as the council is aware, the city has received a grant to update the draft local coastal land use plan. And this update will study how sea level rise and erosion will impact social, economic, and physical coastal resources in the city. So staff is requesting that council designate 2 members to meet with staff on an as-needed basis to assist in identifying issues and providing general guidance on this important initiative.
Okay. Any council questions? John?
Not a question, but I'll volunteer for one of those positions.
Okay. Sue Varla?
I'd also like to volunteer.
Okay. Deirdre?
I was also going to volunteer.
Okay, I won't volunteer. No. Yeah, we probably should have the public answer first.
Comments rather than questions.
Okay, if you want to make comments, and then we'll have a public hearing.
I'll wait for my comment.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to comment on this item? I have no cards. Okay, bringing it back to council. Sue Degree has some comments.
Yes, so I'm not quite sure why you want this, and I don't know if you want me to ask you that, but I do have concerns about this because I have a bad memory of when we had 2 council persons go on a group with staff, and then I felt that it came to council, but it was like already a done deal, and it felt like we were left out because we weren't on the consistent input, and it just seemed rather rapid, and it didn't turn out to be a very friendly type of a thing, so I am a little concerned about that.
So if I could respond, thank you for asking that. So the staff's intent here is to utilize the ad hoc committee, if it is appointed, to help us actually improve the transparency of this project. It's the policies that will ultimately be developed are going to be so important for the future of this community that staff feels that it's very important that we get feedback from this ad hoc committee to help us make sure that our community engagement plan is what it should be, that we're adequately identifying community stakeholders that need to be a part of the community process. So it would be a part of making sure that we're engaging everyone who needs to be a part of the future community meetings, be noticed about future council planning commission meetings. And so the intent here isn't to supersede any of that process, and we will be hiring and working with qualified consultants who will be working with staff on the technical aspects separate from the ad hoc committee. So that is the intent.
Well, I know your intentions are honorable. I just have serious reservations. I would rather see it come before council for direction from all of us, similar to how we did the fireworks type of thing before we started off with subcommittees. It's such an important issue. I just have a very bad recollection of what happened before, and everybody's intention was.
Can I ask some clarifying questions? It's only going to be basically one meeting, right? More than one meeting now? Okay.
The intention is to have this committee available throughout the life of the project, which is about 1.5 years.
Okay. Okay. And the contract itself would be brought before the entire council?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And is there going to be updates every 6
There's
months,
a pretty
9 months,
comprehensive
whatever?
community engagement plan, and so not only will there be community meetings, stakeholder meetings, study sessions with council, planning commission, so there will be active community engagement throughout the process.
Okay. Deirdre?
So I had met with Director Wermeister on this as well, and initially I was in favor of this, and now that you've brought it up, I think it's no mystery that there are a lot of council members who are probably on opposite sides of the fence in terms of a lot of the stuff that will impact our coastline here. So I'm kind of leaning towards Sue Degree's concern that it doesn't come back to council as kind of a done deal, that we all have, an equal say in it. And I know that's really hard to do when you only have 2 representatives in these meetings and we're all trying to work under the Brown Act. When we go to a community forum, I'm not really sure how that applies if we want to make comment and kind of give input at that time, say all 5 of us show up. Because, I've been thinking about this long and hard and looking at our coastline and reading up on it and studying up on it. And there are things that this community, not just myself, but with others, wants and is interested in as well. And I also understand the other side of it where it would, planning commission would have to make recommendations and things like that. But I don't know how else to say that. I guess I'm sort of opposed to that now that I think about it.
I'm not trying to squelch anybody, but I just did get a card on this item, so I believe I closed the public hearing, but if it's okay with everybody, we'll reopen it for the one card. Okay. Cynthia Kaufman? And is there anybody else that wants to speak on this? Because when I close, it will be closed. Okay. Tiger does. Okay, Cynthia.
So I put my comment in before the conversation shifted, but I just did want to say that I'm so excited that you're doing this, and I'm really looking forward to a really excellent job on this, especially given sea level rise. I think it's incredibly important that it be done well. And that I did just want to say that I really hope that everybody takes the most up-to-date and relevant science into consideration for this. And I was concerned with the thing that Ian Butler had said earlier, and I just really hope that whoever ends up on this really takes the science seriously. Thank you.
Tiger?
Good evening again, Honorable Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just as I'm listening to the concerns, what occurred to me is one solution could be, if you decide to do it, to intentionally choose 2 different people who would tend to look at each other as from the opposite side of the fence to keep it balanced, and that way inherently there's a vested interest in bringing 2 potentially disparate perspectives to the whole group for further discussion. In that way, it wouldn't necessarily be pulled in a particular direction away from a full-bodied discussion. Thank you.
Okay, and Bridget? And Bridget's is the last card I have on this item. So anybody else wishes to speak, please come forward.
Hi. This is exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about. It's a wonderful idea, and we have incredibly capable people in charge of it. And it could have the potential to really be a beneficial thing. But I absolutely agree with Sue Degree, and there definitely needs to be, I think it's a good opportunity for our city, and as far as who's on the, I strongly recommend nobody who is not, in other words, these issues are so serious that having anybody on a committee such as this that is a climate denier is absolutely the opposite of what needs to happen. There is no more room in this conversation for non-facts, and climate denial is essentially ignoring the facts that are before us. And it is not something that we can afford to do right now. At this point, we are on the front edge of this issue that the world is facing because we have a rising ocean. And so I just hope that we can take it seriously, and I have the utmost confidence in the staff and in the city. We have intelligent people, we have scientists, we have everything we need to work ourselves through this issue and come out the other way, all being the winners, but not if we don't face the facts about climate change.
Okay. Anybody, any other cards or any speakers for this item? Okay, I close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Just to kind of as a process question, there seems, Sue has kind of brought up an idea of not appointing anybody. Am I correct in that, Sue?
Right, bringing it to council on a regular basis as staff works on things so that each of us can have an open in front of the public conversation. I'm not trying to slow anything down, and I'm definitely, as you know, in favor of public forums every other week. But I know that's not going to happen. So I just don't, it was just a very bad experience the last time, and there weren't all kinds of public forums on that issue.
Okay, there seems to be, if I heard correctly, Deirdre kind of agrees with Sue. Why don't you make a motion and we just bring it to a vote, and then we'll move. That's permissible, isn't it?
Can I just make one more comment?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm not trying to cut anybody off either. I'm just trying to process
before
question.
we have a vote, I just want to say that the RFPs for the consulting company were due today, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that we actually have a deadline on this one for January of 2019, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so the timeline is between August of this year, technically, and December of the following year. So I just want anybody who's on current council to also consider their longevity here, if it comes to that.
Well, let me I want to ask her something to clarify then, but the local coastal plan is going to go on for much longer than 2000, oh wait, this is 2017, right? Excuse me.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of a subcommittee.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
right. So it's about a 1.5-year commitment, basically.
Right. And if it's the council's desire not to appoint an ad hoc committee for that length of time, I would suggest that you perhaps consider whether or not you would like 2 members to sit in on the consultant selection process. And the actual contract approval will be before council, hopefully August 14th.
Okay.
As an option.
Okay.
And one more just to add on to that is, that's actually a very short timeline in terms of a project, and a project of this size. So work needs to start yesterday, and that means things need to get planned out, mid-August, you're going to have your timeline, right, if we get somebody on board. So I foresee there being more engagement if there is a subcommittee, but like I said, I think I'm against that now. So.
Okay. Sue Varela?
There must be a reason why you asked for 2 members of the council to be on the subcommittee. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, because you can't have more, otherwise it's
right.
Brown
I
Act
understand
violation.
that. I understand the Brown Act.
So that primarily was just whenever you ask for a committee of council, it's usually 2 members. Yeah.
Okay.
You're expecting to have 2 members of council on your committee when you set it up.
It's not as a regular appointed committee, it's an ad hoc committee.
Right.
So it's a little different than, say, the Library Advisory Committee, for example.
It'd be more like the fireworks committee, right? It has a beginning, it has an end, and then there's a report to council. Yeah. Okay, Sue, agree?
Well, that's, so the timeline is tight, so yes, like, and then there's a report to council. So that's like, this is a very serious issue. So 2 people are going to be happy because they're going to be on it, and 3 people are going to be like, what are you talking about, you know? So do you envision some way of involving the other 3 rather than getting to a point where we get a report and have to say yay or nay to the report? Or is there a wiggle room?
I would look to our council, but I would say that that may be difficult without having a Brown Act violation, a serial meeting, for example.
Oh, no, I mean a public, in council.
So yes, we would be bringing items to the council as a whole.
Right.
For decision
So when is your
points.
deadline? When do you need a final product again?
December of 2018.
So December of 2018. So I mean, obviously we want to deal with all of these 3 major things about sea level rise. So I would rest more comfortably if you would assure me that it's going to come to the 5 of us a little more often, so that we're not just receiving a finished report and has to be done because that's the way it has to be done, and it's a yay or nay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, okay, so would it be possible, all right, the deadline that it has to be done is the 12/2018. Would it be possible or doable for you to finish it, let's say, in September of 2018, in case the council would like to make any revisions to the report or whatever?
So just to clarify, that due date is inclusive of public review and adoption periods. So it's not when the final product is produced and then we're just going to hand it to you guys and say approve it. That is inclusive of the public hearings that are required, as well as, of course, along the way, the study sessions and
Okay,
public
so
meetings.
first you're going to have public hearings, digest them, and then publish them, and then it comes to the council for revisions or approval or whatever, right?
Yes.
And then by December, so it could be October, November next year, that we actually vote on it.
Yes.
Okay. So, any other comments? Okay, so Sue Vaterlaus?
I just want to make a comment that I believe in sea level rise, that there is sea level rise, and that all committees should be made up of a broad cross-section of the community, and therefore I would agree with one of the members who spoke about having some people with differing opinions on the committee.
Okay. So, did you want to make a motion, Sue, since you brought it up, of not having, I'm trying to paraphrase for you, but basically that no council members would be on this committee whatsoever?
Oh, you're talking to me? No.
Yeah.
No, as long as, I think you're agreeing with me that there's going to be ample time for the 5 of us in public to be able to speak frankly.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not willing to make an emotion?
No.
Okay. John Keener?
So if a committee was appointed, would they, for instance, be able to report on their activities during council communications?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yeah, sure. Yes.
Okay.
Not a problem. Okay, Deirdre?
So then, given that, I'm okay with then moving forward with appointing 2. And, sorry, I'm losing my voice, I'm not going through puberty again. But I would like a bi-monthly update I mean, no doubt, and would also like the ability to be able to call planning director and get an update regardless. That's also a possibility, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, so the issue of not appointing anybody is off the table. Now we have a discussion of there's 3 volunteers, and we only need 2 for an ad hoc.
4
committee.
volunteers.
Oh, you volunteered too?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So
I'll pull mine back.
you're going to pull yours back. So now we're down to 3 little piggies. Okay. So,
Are you sure, Deidre? Because I was going to recommend you and John.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I would like to, but I just feel that there has to be ample representation, and I actually don't feel that having John and I represent
Okay, so you're pulling back, fine.
gives
So
Sue Vaterlos, who obviously we all kind of have differing views on things, and we need that in life, and I appreciate that, her voice, so I think that's important too.
can someone make a motion to nominate John and Sue Vaterlos? Or
I'll make a motion to appoint Councilmember Keener and Councilmember Vaterlos to limited term ad hoc subcommittee to assist staff with the local coastal use plan update.
is there a second?
Second.
2 degrees seconds, so please vote. And that motion passes 5-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 13, the 4th of July report to City Council. Chief of Police Untitled.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members. I'm Dan Stidle, your Chief of Police. So I come before you today to present to you a report on the activities and what took place in our community on the 4th of July. Normally we don't present this report till a little bit later in the year, but given the work of the Illegal Fireworks Task Force, as well as the concerns in the community regarding the use of illegal fireworks, we felt it would be a little more appropriate to bring this report to you this year as soon as possible. So as you know, Pacifica has a long history and a tradition of community members and visitors celebrating the 4th of July in Pacifica. Our beach locations and the Safe and Sane fireworks sales continue to draw visitors to our community. As with years past, this year we had great collaborative efforts between city departments to assure safe and enjoyable 4th of July celebration for our community members and our visitors. The planning process this year started with police personnel from the North County Fire Authority, as well as the Public Works Department, meeting together to dust off our plans from previous years, find out what worked, what didn't work, and do everything we can to keep Pacifica safe and also clean and functioning normally, especially in the evening during the July 4th celebrations. We had a good deal of coordination with the nonprofit groups that were selling the Safe and Sane fireworks. That entails from the time that they pay their initial fees and they're on board with the sales, my contact with them via email continually, as well as a culmination several weeks before sales starts of a meeting with myself and a member of the North County Fire Authority. We get together at the police department and we talk to the nonprofit groups about the municipal code, what's expected of them, and what's expected of them in terms of operating a safe fireworks stand. We also conducted quite a bit of public outreach this year, much more than usual, regarding the activities and enforcement efforts for the 4th of July. The majority of this coming from the suggestions from the Illegal Fireworks Task Force, and we'll talk a little bit more later on in the presentation about exactly what the results of some of those public outreach activities were. So taking a look at our operations for the police department that day, again, as always, it was a mandatory work day for all of our officers on the 4th of July, the majority of them working in the evening hours. The officers were distributed into beach enforcement teams, working the Lindemar Beach, working the Sharp Park Beach area, and also working the Surfers Lot parking lot, which was closed down for the use of Safe and Sane fireworks, as well as the pump station parking lot south of the Lindemar Rest Area parking lot. We also had neighborhood enforcement teams consisting of plainclothes officers in the neighborhoods to enforce the fireworks ordinances. And on top of all that, we had our normal shift contingent of patrol officers out there that were handling calls for service related to fireworks, as well as their normal calls for service that may occur on any given day. This next slide kind of gives you a breakdown, as I do every year, of what our calls for service are. If you look at the bottom row, 2017, the second column is fireworks calls. Those are calls about complaints specifically related to fireworks all day long, starting at midnight and ending at midnight. There were 238 this year. It's up from 113 from last year. Our fireworks calls for service during our busiest hours, 5 p.m. to midnight, we had 201 this year compared to 103 last year. And if you take a look at all of our total calls for service for that day, not just the illegal fireworks calls, but every other call that our officers responded to, there were 334 calls for service. Councilmember Keener?
Chief, does this include emails from the NAILM app or not?
I will actually. This will actually be a good time to get into that. I'll segue right into that. The way that we use the NAILM app this year is we have somebody that was dedicated. It was the watch commanders, the sergeants on duty that were dedicated on all days leading up to the 4th for responding to those. So what would happen is when a citizen reports something via the NAILM app, the email would be sent. We had a specific email address set up at the police department. The watch commander's cell phone would go off, they would get the report, and that call would be dispatched via our dispatch center. So the reason it went through the dispatch center is so a call for service was created. A record of that call from that app was generated. Now, on the 4th of July, we did the same thing, except that we had one person at the command post that was responsible for going through all those emails as they were coming in and making sure dispatch was getting them and entering them as calls for service. However, what we found, and I'll get into the reasons why just a little bit later on, once we reached about 10 o'clock, the calls for service that were coming in via the app were overwhelming. It actually overwhelmed the dispatch center. What it did is it muddled up the screen in terms of pending calls that were on hold, so that when officers were trying to go through their screens in their patrol cars to find out which calls were priority, which ones they needed to be looking out for on their beat, those calls were mixed in with just the unreal amount of calls that were coming in via the NAILM app. And I'll get into that just a little bit more, but to answer your question, yes, up until 10 p.m., those calls for service include the NAILM app. At 10 p.m., because of the overload in the dispatch system, we stopped entering them in as calls for service and went into intelligence mode, where we had the person going through the emails, checking for specific information, checking for any photographs that were coming in, and we used the app for intelligence at that point. So for that 334 calls for service, or if you take a look at 201 calls for service from 5 p.m. to midnight, we had a total of 33 officers working between 7 p.m. and midnight. Now you take out a handful of officers working on Lindemar Beach, Sharp Park Beach, the Safe and Sane areas, and you take out you can include the neighborhood officers that were plainclothes, as well as the patrol officers. You'll see we likely had probably around 20 or just under 20 that were actually responding to calls for service. So, coupled with the number of calls of service you had that night, you can see how quickly the system can be, overloaded. We found, as expected, that our high majority of calls that evening were fireworks related. That evening, officers issued 11 administrative citations for illegal fireworks. That's the administrative citation fine, and they issued one on the 5th of July, on a swing shift on the 5th of July. Of those 12 total over the 2-day period, 2 of those were for the social host ordinance that was recently passed. Also that evening of July 4th, our officers handled 5 non-firework related arrests.
Chief?
Sir.
Question. Of all those calls, the 334 calls, do you have any idea how many were illegal and versus somebody just ticked off that there was fireworks at all?
There's no way for us to disseminate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just,
And on an evening like that, people call, they think that they're illegal, but the amount of calls that are coming into the dispatch center, the dispatchers take as much information as quick as they can to move on to the next one. So taking a look at some of our public outreach, the Illegal Fireworks Task Force recommendations were implemented. We tried to put out as much as we could educational messages via social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor. We also put out information regarding the NALM smartphone application. And we also conducted on-camera interviews with local television media. It was my initial intent to reach out to the media to try to get them to come talk to us, but once the press releases about the NALM application and the social host ordinance went out, the media started coming to us. So in addition to, I believe, 3 on-camera interviews the week before July 4th, there were several news stories that continued without interviews that were conducted on Channel 2 and Channel 4 that they went out and did on their own accord, just talking about the 4th of July. What we found in watching some of those news stories that they did, in years past we get frustrated with the news media portraying Pacifica as this is where you can do your fireworks. That's what people hear. They do talk about safe and sane, but people in the Bay Area here come to Pacifica to do your fireworks. And some of that message was changed a little bit this year. Rather than talking about Pacifica being one of the 2 cities in San Mateo County that allowed fireworks, the media was talking more about the enforcement efforts, which is what we were looking for, and we were grateful for the media to reaching out for us in that aspect. Officers reached out pre-July 4th in contact with more than 30 reported violators from the past, which also segues into our next door communications, which I believe was a huge success. When we started putting this information out there via Nextdoor, the people that are working on my Illegal Fireworks Task Force also went out there and got that in and put that information out. And I was receiving emails from them, questions from the public. The public was contacting members of the task force to ask them questions about what was going on in the enforcement, and they wanted to report past violations. They knew, our community knows very well who the players are and who's out there that they're committing these violations and you know, keeping their neighborhood loud for most of the evening. This led to several emails and phone calls, dozens, coming into my office from concerned citizens who wanted to remain anonymous but say, I want to let you know, Bob Smith, 2 doors up, does it every year and I'm sick of it. Every time we got a new name, we made contact with that person. And we handed them some information saying, hey, you've been identified as someone who may be doing this in the past. We want to let you know what the results of your actions may be in terms of enforcement, but we also want to give you some educational material so that you understand what the difference between a legal and an illegal firework is to try and keep yourself out of trouble. I was frankly quite overwhelmed in a good way with the information that was coming in. We had never seen that before. Nextdoor helped us get the conversation started. And a lot of the people that were coming out, and as you know at the police department, we can't see what Nextdoor was going on there because we're a government entity. People on Nextdoor were cutting and pasting comments that people were putting on Nextdoor and emailing to us so we could see what was going on. We've talked about, and you've heard me before talk about the illegal fireworks problem being a culture in certain areas of our town. Some of the things that we were hearing from or seeing the people were talking about in Nextdoor was that it's the 4th of July and I'm a patriot of our country and this is what we do. We also heard several people say things such as, this is what we do in this area of town, you guys just need to get over it. Speaking to other community members that were complaining about it on Nextdoor. So again, we realize that it is a culture that we're fighting against here. Quite a few comments that we're receiving from some citizens, and this is actually what I was really pleased with, is people were saying to us, we didn't realize you cared. We didn't realize the city cared about this problem. But you've come out so much this year, and you've talked about what's going on, you're trying to change things, and we appreciate that. So on the flip side of it, we did get a lot of good information and a lot of compliments from the community as well. The NAILA map, the days leading up to the 4th of July, it worked out well for us in that the calls for service weren't that high. But if we take a look at the reports received on July 4th, just from the NAILA map alone, we received 323 reports via the application. And again, some of these reports came in more than once. They were duplicate reports. The information we were getting from citizens is, we sent this in 5 minutes ago, why is there not a police officer on my street? And the reason being, we have 35 calls pending right now because the phone is ringing off the hook and everything is coming in from the app. That's why you don't have an officer there. We were getting duplicate reports. People were calling in the same thing that they were reporting on the application. We were also getting false reports from the application. One of the things that came out of the intelligence that we were conducting in the days leading to the 4th of July was there were people that were threatening to crash the app by overloading it. Well, they didn't crash the app. We did get way too many calls coming in for our dispatch to handle, but the app worked just fine in terms of what it was supposed to do. We know a lot of the, myself, I went up to one area of town at about 11 p.m. and I had my cell phone out because I do get the emails myself. And I was watching the area where these reports were coming in via the app, and then probably 8 to 10 came in within a 2-minute period for this area. Likely the same person trying to overload the app. And I was sitting where it was supposed to be occurring. There wasn't anything going on. So we know that, you know, again, those numbers that you see on the stats in terms of calls for service, they're probably skewed to the high level. Again, we worked to educate the community regarding the expectation of immediate police response. We do understand that it's very frustrating to hear that kind of activity in your neighborhood, but when you're dealing with 300 calls for service that night, some of those calls, unfortunately, are going to hold. Again, several emails came in after the 4th of July regarding that issue, addressing it with me. And the high number of people that were complaining to me about the response times were reasonable people. They're just upset over the noise. As soon as you take the time to educate them as to why, they were okay with it. They understood. And this is something in our last illegal fireworks task meeting that we spoke about. We spoke about, although there were still a lot of illegal fireworks this year, that this outreach and building this foundation with this community involvement and this education probably served us well. And some of that is after the fact, explaining to the community why things went the way they did, why it took so long to get an officer into your neighborhood that night. The NAILM application, we found that minimal additional information was received via the application. People weren't using the picture portion of it. They weren't giving us a lot of detail. Sometimes we were just getting the report with the area it was occurring. We found that it was a good tool for times when calls for service were lower, if the application features were used, but it was ineffective during periods of high volume of calls. And again, that's not the fault of the application, that's just the high number of calls. Mayor?
Is it possible, I mean, this is not a problem that happens just July 4th. I mean, it happens major sporting events, New Year's, just because someone has no life and lets off fireworks. Is this app available 365 so that if somebody sees that happen now, they can take a report and send it to you?
Yes, we can do that, yes.
Okay. Do you have any plans to do that?
It's being discussed.
I'm just curious.
Given that even during those times, the call volume is so super low that I'm not sure that would have any other effect, the same effect as if you had picked up the phone and called the dispatcher.
No, I was just thinking that if somebody's letting them off for Giants game, they're probably going to let them off July 4th. And it's almost, if you do the social host, it's almost a deterrent.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that maybe you'll be stemming July 4th.
Right. And then there's certainly no opposition to leaving it, and using it 365.
I was just wondering the mechanics and staffing and all those kind of issues.
Well, in that case, it's in terms of using it 365, it really doesn't require any more staffing time for us. Our watch commanders, the sergeants that are on duty in charge of the shift, have the department cell phone in their pocket with them while they're working, and as soon as that call comes in via the app, their phone beeps, so they know it's there. In terms of the illegal firework activity that night, there were reports of reduced usage in certain neighborhoods. A couple of community members have contacted me about thanking us regarding the low usage in their neighborhoods, knowing very well that we had contacted people in their neighborhoods. The city manager rode with me for a couple hours in an unmarked vehicle that night, and I told him on a couple of occasions when we were in areas that I was used to seeing just completely lit up that I was a little worried. It was like the calm before the storm. I was waiting for it to come, but it never came. But again, the areas where they were being used, there was a high usage and a high level of complaints and frustration from our citizens. We continue to have difficulty in apprehending the violators. Again, our city manager saw this firsthand on one of our trips. I went up one street where I know we've had problems in the past, and just as I turned the corner and starting, and mind you, I just in a normal jeans and a shirt and a jacket, and the city manager was dressed normal, and my Ford Fusion doesn't look like a police car. And as soon as we came up the street, there was a group of people on the corner on the walkie-talkie yelling to the people up the street, car. Not necessarily a police car, but here's a car that we're not familiar with in our neighborhood. And the activity stopped. And as soon as we got up and around the street and down the other side, as soon as we were out of sight, started up again. So that's the type of thing that the officers have to deal with. It's difficult. You almost have to get right up on them to tell exactly who's doing it and where it's coming from. Fire Department, North Carolina Fire Authority, again, very professional this year. They were proactively patrolling the streets with us, looking for fire hazards, looking for problems. They put fire apparatus in strategic locations within the city in order to decrease the response time should there be a fire. They responded to 6 fire incidents this year. Chief Myers told me, fortunately this year there were only 6, and they were 6 debris fires, usually garbage fires. There were no vegetation fires, and unfortunately no structure fires this year. And again, our good friends at the Public Works Department were very helpful with us. There's a lot of activity that goes into planning and preparing things, preparing signage, preparing barricades, placement of adequate debris receptacles, as well as the beach facility attention. A lot of people on the beach, a lot of facilities out there trying to keep those things operational and keep them clean and safe for our community members as well as our visitors. This is the point every year where we start talking about city costs and cost recovery via the 8% fireworks fee. We don't have that for you yet, again, because we're bringing this presentation to you so early this year. Those numbers for the 8% fee aren't due into the city until, I believe, the first week of September. By that time, we'll have our costs tallied up, and I can come back to you or present something to you that shows you all what our city costs were for putting on the 4th of July this year as related to what were recovered from the 8% fee. So in conclusion, I would say one of the, as usual, our city collaboration amongst departments was very effective. It's a well-oiled machine. We were able to get through the 4th of July without any major incidents and without any problems whatsoever. The primary community complaint continues to be illegal fireworks. And again, one thing I can say for sure, thanks to the work of the Illegal Fireworks Task Force, the community outreach and the conversation in the community, between the community and the police department, was at an all-time high for this holiday. And again, we've talked about community involvement and outreach many times in other presentations I've given you. And I firmly believe that this year is a very, very good start for laying that communication with the community and getting that foundation. Several people have commented to me in emails that they want to see the continuation of the Illegal Fireworks Task Force, which is something I've already discussed with the task force. And again, a very high energy group of people that really, really want to make a difference in this community. So I'm going to be discussing it further with the city manager. And in the very near future, I plan on bringing something back to council regarding staff recommendations regarding the Illegal Fireworks Task Force. As you know, it sunsets unless the council extends it 1 year from the first day we sat, which was March 20th. So it'll sunset long before the 4th of July next year. And with that, I'd be happy to, oh, sorry, the last part I wanted to speak about was, again, the Illegal Fireworks Task Force. The other thing we're considering is a change in our strategy. We worked, as with any law enforcement type of activity, we take a look at what worked, what didn't work, what our problems continue to be, and how we can approach it differently. We have a couple of good tools in place with a $1,000 fine as well as the social host ordinance. There are things we're going to consider for next year that we're not ready to actually come forward with yet, perhaps more of a prevention strategy rather than an enforcement strategy. But again, we have many months to talk about that. And one thing I can assure you, this is a problem that's just not specific to Pacifica. I was speaking to Dennis Ravel from Ravel Communications, who was with TNT and was responsible for getting us the nail map this year. And he shared with some information with me. I think we've all seen this on the news, in the days after 4th of July. News stories, Bakersfield and Kern County fire departments overwhelmed by illegal fireworks. KPIX believes San Jose's $50,000 effort to curtail illegal fireworks was a dud. And the stories go on and on. If you went up to Skyline Boulevard on July 4th, it's a pretty amazing show if you look across over the bay and watch the entire East Bay light up with these fireworks. So it is a problem that we continue to deal with, as well as the rest of the communities in the Bay Area. But it's our intention to continue to do what we can to try and put a dent in this problem. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions from council.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I have no cards from the public. So is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this? Mr. Ravel from TNT. You got to submit a yellow card after you get back. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Dennis Ravel, appearing on behalf of our client TNT Fireworks. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank this body and compliment it for its decision to form the Illegal Fireworks Task Force, and concurrently to also thank city staff and city departments. I think that this was an exemplary evidence of community and local government cooperation between the nonprofit organizations, the city staff and departments, and the state-approved fireworks industry. As somebody that, there were 3 of us that on the NALA map who were responsible for the non-participating jurisdictions. Fortunately, this city was one of the participating ones, and by that I mean we got reports in on NALM that we had to manually refer as opposed to automatically refer as this city did. And I can tell you that on the night of the 4th of July, statewide, we couldn't keep up with the pace as we were manually referring those, and those took about 7 to 15 seconds to do each time. And we were up until 4:30 in the morning continuing to refer them. Unfortunately, the illegal fireworks problem in this state has metastasized and grown every year, in large part because of the fact that nothing is being done to stop the product from coming into the state. For those of you who will be attending or are this city's delegates to the League of California Cities convention in mid-September, the League of Cities Chiefs Committee, we're working with them as well as with the State Fire Marshal to present a plan of attack statewide to deal with this, both at a state, local, and federal level. And many of the things that have been accomplished in this city just this year in terms of the innovative stuff that the police chief has done, and certainly I would like to single him out in particular amongst city staff for his leadership on the task force, as well as what he did in the period leading up to and including the 4th of July. But I would encourage your members who will be attending the League of California Cities convention to attend that presentation. The League, unfortunately, is only allocated 15 minutes for this problem, but we are sincerely hoping that Chief McLaughlin, who's head of the League's fire chief group, will indeed be able to put together a comprehensive program.
I actually have a question for you, Mr. Ravel. I don't know if you even keep statistics on this, but do you see any sort of relevancy between those cities that allow legal, safe, and sane fireworks and those cities that do not? and the illegal fireworks problem? Is there, you know what I mean?
This year, as in most previous years, the cities that did not allow state-approved fireworks had a more perverse problem than those that do, and they had more problems leading up to the 4th, and they continue to have more problems. San Jose, classic example. We are getting still, to this day, on average, anywhere from a half a dozen to a dozen NALM reports out of San Jose every day. I think we've had 1 or 2 from this city since the 4th of July. But San Jose, Oakland, those 2 cities in the Bay Area, it was just astronomical, the number of reports that we got, and they were not a participating city.
But do they allow safe and sane fireworks?
Neither of those cities do.
Okay, because I was just curious.
And to San Jose's credit, they put $50,000 into enforcement and public education programs and the like, and the problem was just too overwhelming. This city was able to do so much effectively because it had the community involvement that it did.
Okay, so that's one argument people say is if we disallow legal fireworks, that would, we wouldn't have the problem. However, if I wanted to find out and see what your experience was, but if we don't have the safe and sane fireworks, we wouldn't have the money to have that many officers on duty because of the 8% surtax. So it's catch-22 for us too. Okay, any questions?
Well, and it's interesting to note, we can chart where the reports were from NALM, and one of the values, I think, of this as a tool to all cities is the database that you develop for problem locations and problem neighborhoods so that you can focus your enforcement the following year. Is that, interestingly enough, at least from a NALM standpoint, I'm not sure if it would prove true on the calls to your non-emergency dispatch, most of the reports didn't come from the beach area. They came from the neighborhoods.
Yeah, I know it is a problem. I mean, with my experience. Okay, is there anybody else have any questions for Mr. Ravel? No? No? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, did you?
Chief.
Oh, yeah, for the chief you have questions, but I just wanted to check with Mr. Ravel. Sue Vadalos?
I know you don't have the numbers yet, but I believe that the Safe and Sane fireworks cover most of the cost of the overtime for police and fire. And if we didn't have the Safe and Sanes, we would still have to pay that cost that we don't get from the Safe and Sane fireworks sales. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And in terms of those costs, we usually come within $800 to maybe $1,000, just short of what our costs were. Yes.
And I have 3 questions. And do the administrative fees that you charged on those 12 people, do those come back into the city?
Yes.
Towards our, okay, that helps too.
Yes.
And have we ever looked into having a large fireworks show?
I've heard it discussed. I don't know how far that's actually ever gone. I don't know if it's ever been discussed at the executive team level or at the council level. I believe one fireworks task force before us, or 1 or 2 before us, it had been discussed, but I'm not aware that it's actually ever taken off, if you will.
And I'm not sure that would help either.
In my opinion, it's not going to help.
Yeah.
Help.
Thank you. Sue, agree?
Could you review what intelligence mode means?
I'm sorry. Intelligence mode means rather than using once at 10 o'clock, once we were overwhelmed with the reports coming from the application, the NALM application, rather than putting those in as calls for service, we were screening them. We were trying to gain intelligence. We were trying to find out if there was a pattern where more calls were coming in than others. We were checking to see what people were writing, if they were giving us any good information. And basically, what I mean by intelligence is information gathering. although we weren't using it as to generate calls for service at that point, we were gathering information regarding where problems were occurring from it.
So, so am I to understand then that because you were able to do that, that when you come with the next report, you will be looking at, I think you referred to it as a gap, but something that you could come up with as a response to that overwhelmingness, but then, as I think I forget what his name is, Rebel had a map that shows where activity was this year. So going forward, you might be able to tell us another step that could be taken to help solve this situation?
That is something that we will discuss amongst my staff. It's also something, if the task force continues, which I'm likely going to recommend that it does, that we will be discussing. And yes, we will. That'll be part of the data. We'll be using data from probably, I usually go back 3 years when we start to take a look at what the problems have been. You'll find that they're confined to certain pockets within town. They'll move a little bit. And again, you know, as we know, we've talked for so many years about how difficult it is to enforce. You know, some of the things we're going to be talking about for next year is there a different way we can look at it? And, you know, what can we do in terms of prevention that night while we're out there before it even starts? So that might be one of the angles we take, but more to follow.
So another question. So you had mentioned this is what we do. So are they referring to we use illegal fireworks and that's it, get over it? Is that what they were talking about?
That's exactly what they were saying.
Thank you.
Okay, Deirdre?
I want to commend you for all the hard work that you put in for that night, and also for the use of social media and the application. And I hope that moving forward, we can kind of work out those kinks and try to figure out how to deduplicate a lot of those reports so it can be used a little bit more precisely. And I think there were 2 emails that came in very late in the day today that I barely skimmed that were just kind of saying, this is a pretty picture, but it may not have been what the reality, some people, and there's still reports on Nextdoor saying it really kind of wasn't as it is, but I understand the difficulties in your position, and commend the fireworks task force. Every year we're doing something a little bit more, so we're getting there. I don't know where there is, but we're getting somewhere, so thanks.
You're welcome, and Councilmember Martin, that I don't know where there is yet either, but as I've talked to other staff members about, you know, God willing, I have another 5.5 or 6 years left, and this isn't something to me that's acceptable just to throw your hands up and say that's just the way it is. We're going to keep working at it.
Thanks.
John?
Yeah, I actually talked to one of the folks that emailed this afternoon that we all got, right, and saw the other one and read through them pretty closely. And that it seemed to me that they had 2 objections to the staff report, okay? And one was that, like Deirdre said, it painted a pretty picture, you know, so sort of the last line of it is, has led to another successful, safe 4th of July holiday in Pacifica. And it was safe, definitely. Successful, you know, it's in the eye of the beholder, I think. And so they objected to that, and they objected to only 12 citations. So the citations, you're doing the best you can, okay? And I really, you've presented why you only got 12, and we'll look forward to further strategy improvement next year. I mean, it's a gradual process, and I do believe we're on that road. But I do tend to agree with the fellows that emailed that in the written staff report, at times we tend to sugarcoat the problem, and whereas in your oral presentation, you gave a little more hard-hitting, real politic presentation, and I appreciate that. So, we all want to move forward and devise new strategies. We'll see if they work. I think one thing that is hopeful from this year is what you have said, and probably most of us have seen, that the community is much more sort of aware that a lot of people find the illegal fireworks reprehensible. And so, maybe we can build on that and make a little more progress next year. And, I would definitely support extending the illegal fireworks task force. So, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Sue, agree?
I would say if this is the time for it, yes, I think definitely extending the task force is definitely in order. I think that some of the community probably still needs to hear the two parts of the report. One, that we were successful, but I think what you're saying is we were successful in that our reaching out ahead of time and getting input from the community was very supportive and bigger than usual, and that we didn't have any major deaths, shall we say, or major fires. But I think some of the things that are actually in the written report that did highlight some of the difficulties with, again, this year with illegal. I mean, we're not at all saying that it was a successful year, that we don't have anything to worry about. We definitely still have a problem that we're dealing with. And one question I had was, staff found that community members were not using the application features to assist in pinpointing locations, although I thought we said that they did an exemplary job.
What I was trying to get across with that is they were reporting things via the application, but there's ways they can send us pictures to show us where the fireworks are coming from.
Specific, so
exactly.
You can respond.
As well, they can put a narrative in there to give us specifics about who's doing what. But what we found is more often than not, they were doing just what they would do on the 4th of July when it's busy, is picking the phone and saying, come to dispatcher, there's fireworks on my street, get a cop here and hang up. That's what the equivalent of it was.
Now, the other, if I heard this correctly, it sounded like those who prefer to behave badly and have their illegal fireworks, their intent was to flood the system so it would crash. So you're saying that it didn't crash, but actually it did have some kind of an effect that covered them, shall we say, or how shall I put that?
The app itself did not crash. The app worked perfectly, exactly as the app should have worked. What it did do, based on several things that I spoke about, the duplicate reports, the people that were calling in, the calls and using the application, as well as some of the false reports, and again, I couldn't tell you how many of those, for sure, how many of those numbers were, created such a high volume that we had to stop using it for the calls for service purpose and separate it from the calls that were coming in via the telephone.
So I'm assuming that your cleverness, you will sort of work on that and figure out what possibly could be done, because it sounds like clever people that want to continue to do badly will figure out that they will just flood it and mess up all the other reports from others.
Certainly, and to be quite honest with you, Councilmember Degree, I'm not quite sure that the app on the 4th of July itself is the best option. In terms of generating calls for service and using it in that way, still use the application. Perhaps use it, again, in more of intelligence mode, going through the emails, trying to decide, having somebody stationed at the command post, deciphering what's useful coming out of there. Trends in a certain area of town, people are putting photographs, people putting names of violators, and deciphering that information rather than just pushing all that information and overloading our dispatch center.
So I'm also hearing that if we were a little bit better at doing the photographs, that actual photographs would come through, so those that are using it just to try to crash the system, the photographs would actually help you to know where the actual problems are in that. So this is kind of like in your future report. It's fine.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do I have a motion, unless there's further discussion, do I have a motion to accept the report? Sue Vaterhaus?
Motion to accept the report as read.
Can I make a question? When we accept the report,
Can I just get a second? Second?
All second.
Okay, John, now your question.
Could we say something to the fact that, so the public knows that we're not just accepting a report that everything was fine, that we're accepting, you know, I'm trying to think of how to word it. You got an idea?
I think, based on the discussion up here,
Would be enough?
yeah, I mean, you know, just about everybody has said, you know, it's not fine. It was great effort, but, you know, hopefully next year will be a little bit better.
I didn't speak, but I agree with that sentiment, and I was on the task force, and I think it should be, you know, continued, and I think we should renew the ordinance, because I think you said it was going to be expiring or something, too. So anyhow, we have a motion on the floor. Any other comments?
I think you have a second.
Yeah, we got a second.
We got a second. So we got Sue made it, Vaterhaus made it, John, sorry. Vote, please. And we accept the report 5-0. So is anybody up for a break?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's see, it's 9:22, so we'll take a 5-minute break, please. Thank you.
What time was it?
9.
I guess I was wrong. Nobody here to speak on how many times are you going to mention this financial That's right. Yeah. Hi, Keith Breskin, how are you?
No caffeine, right? I only work on Pacifica, so there's never
It's only 9:30. Points, Mrs. O'Connell.
Thank you.
Okay, I call the meeting back to order after the break. Okay, and I need my glasses. Next item is item number 14, introduction of an ordinance amending the title, Chapter 8 of Title 2 regarding elections and adding Section 2-8.05 to Chapter 8 of Title 2 of the Pacifica Municipal Code. Staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. At the July 10th council meeting, Councilmember Martin stated her support for an ordinance that would require the public financing, the public disclosure of financial contributions made on behalf of candidates and ballot measures, and it was agreed to bring a draft ordinance before you at tonight's meeting. That is what is before you for consideration. It's an ordinance that would require information on single source contributions exceeding $600, independent expenditures in excess of $1,000. There would be summaries and reports printed in the local newspaper 2 months before each election and 1 week before each election. In addition, the ordinance as drafted would require an independent expenditure greater than $5,000 for the individual making that expenditure to notify the city clerk of that expenditure, as well as supporting and opposing committees if the expenditure involves a ballot measure or recall, and notifying all candidates of the expenditure if it involves a candidate. We've estimated the fiscal impact. That's actually, to be honest, somewhat of a guess, because you never know, outside of this upcoming special election, how many candidates there may be on running for office at any particular time. So we've assumed a quarter-page ad for those requirements. In the case of the upcoming election, a quarter-page ad for each ballot measure for the 2 month prior and the 1 week prior. And with that, we were happy to try and answer any questions and open up for your discussion.
Any questions from council? Sue Vanderlaus?
This says a newspaper of general circulation, and what if we don't have the Tribune? Would we have to advertise in something like the Chronicle or the San Mateo Times or another newspaper that may be quite a bit more costly than the Tribune.
As drafted, yes, you would need to submit the information to another periodical of general circulation, such as the ones that you just suggested.
Okay.
Any other council questions? Deirdre?
I also kind of just want to make a comment that I think that the estimate is a guesstimate, actually. I talked to city manager today, and I was looking at the numbers, because if we're talking about the upcoming election and you are taking out one quarter-age pad for each ballot measure, my question is, can't you put 2 ballot measures on 1 quarter-page ad? I think the answer is yes, but I'm really just guessing on that. And so that actual estimate in there wouldn't be correct. Well, wait, it would be times 4 then, because you would have to post it twice, right? Okay. But in addition to that, I just want everyone to think about the other things that would, I think, be eliminated because of these publications, which might be things like requests from city clerk and the need for city clerk to go and have to physically make hard copies and meet with people to hand them over. So those things, whether they take 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, are very valuable time that could also be eliminated by these publications. So I just wanted to make those kind of comments before we open the floor.
Any other comments from council? Sudhir?
A question. So on page 155, it says expenditures in excess of 1,000. Wouldn't it be easier to compute if it was 1,000 or above, or just rather than excess of 1,000, 1,000 and above? So I guess my question is, if somebody does an expenditure of 1,000, you don't report it. But if it's 1,001 cents, you do report it. Am I wrong on that?
That's correct.
So wouldn't it be simpler and easier to compute to say 1,000 and above? Because if I'm understanding it right now, you don't need to report anything if it's $1,000.
That's correct.
I think we're kind of getting into deliberations before the
Okay, but I just wanted to
public
understand.
comment.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's not a valid argument, I just,
Yeah, that's fine.
you're deliberating. I was going to just comment on Deirdre.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I agree that you probably would have less public information requests. However, you are having the city clerk go through the files and make up a separate list because you have $600. That's not in the FPPC filings. The form is $100 and above. So anything under $600 does not have to be published with their names and all that stuff, right? So she would have to actually create, assuming an Excel spreadsheet, whatever, for that information, which would eat up, in addition to the $400, that would be additional time.
Is that actually the case?
Well, we would have to create a document for
Right.
this summary which would be inclusive of, it could be the candidates, ballot measures, or it could be a separate one for each.
Twice, right?
Right.
Okay.
But it would be but the FPPC documents are not at 600, correct?
Correct.
So anything below 600 would not be reported. So if she could just scan the whole thing, 100 and above, and post it, that type of thing.
I think that's also okay.
Would be more efficient. So actually, John wanted to say something.
Yeah, so I understood from this that you would have to scan everything that came in and put it on the website, all the forms, right?
Well,
I think you're only putting it on the website when an individual contribution cumulatively passes $600. We would have to track. We would have to track it
I think it says, all reports and statements required to be filed with the city clerk by any candidate or committee shall be scanned and stored in an electronic format. The reports and statements shall be posted on the city's website no later than 2 working days after filing.
What section are you in?
That's in a different section, though. That's
Yeah.
where,
Yeah, that's Section 3, small letter B. It starts on page 156 and goes on to the top of 157.
Councilmember Keener, I'm sorry, what section are you referring to?
Section 3.
Section 3, subdivision E, is in Edward?
B
okay.
B as in boy. Starts on 156 and finishes at the top of page 157.
That's right. So so you're correct. What that section says is that all campaign reports otherwise required by the Political Reform Act that are generally available from the FPPC must now be available on the city's website, and the city clerk will scan all those reports and maintain them on the city's website.
Right.
So you described it accurately.
The other question I have is on the $1,000. So as it stands now, and I think Kathy will know the answer to this, if a person contributes $1,000 to any campaign, they have to fill out a form. The campaign has to fill out a form if it's in the last month or something.
24 hours.
Correct. 24-hour. They would fill it out. It's a 24-hour contribution.
And it's $1,000 and up, right?
Correct.
And this says just greater than $1,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
I actually think the Political Reform Act is in excess of $1,000, but I can confirm that right now.
Why don't you? Yeah. And that's all the questions I have. We can move on if we're ready to take comment, or
No, I'm kind of, okay, well, actually, it might be considered deliberation, so we'll hold off. So,
You have a question? Well, yeah, I have another question.
Sue Valos?
So in the independent expenditures, who's going to notify the Sierra Club or any of the other people who are contributing independent expenditures that they have to notify the candidates? Because the candidates themselves don't know when they're getting an independent expenditure. And it says that you have to notify the other candidates or the opposing side. So how are they going to get that information?
can I make a comment on that? My only thought is that most of these organizations have a person dedicated solely to making contributions in governmental campaigns, so they would and should look at city ordinances in relation to these things.
And
so.
if I may, Councilmember Waterloss, if this ordinance gets adopted, it does need to be transmitted to the Fair Political Practices Commission. And so on their website, they list the cities that do have campaign contributions. And so this ordinance, you click on Pacifica, the information would be there for them.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will open the public hearing now. So I have several cards. Stan Zevin, I'm going to call 3 names at a time, and if you can kind of line up. Stan Zevin, Caroline Jaramillo, Cynthia Kaufman.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Stan Zevin. Firstly, I'd like to thank the city, particularly both staff and city council. For the first time in many, many years, I feel there's been a slight swing, and maybe even a bigger one, toward more transparency. Thanks again. And that's the reason we're here tonight for this. I don't know, most of you probably know this, but Carlos Davidson did a big research on money in the last election. And without going into the article, there are three things that stuck with me. The first one is that there was a huge discrepancy among the amount of money available to different candidates running for the same office. The second thing was a lot of this money came from out of town, and also it's associated with the real estate industry. And I am blanking out on my third one, so I'll come back to that. Anyway, with Carlos's leadership, we formed an election committee and did a lot of research. And without going into the details, what stuck out in my mind is there are way over 100 cities that already have election laws in place that are very similar to what we are working on. We're actually a little bit late to the table. Anyhow, to summarize all this, I would say that anybody who is interested in aiming toward more transparency and an informed public would want to vote for these laws to be put in place. Thank you.
Next is Carolyn Jaramillo, Cynthia Kaufman, and Carlos Davidson.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Jaramillo. I'm a homeowner here in Pacifica, and I also am a voter in Pacifica. So it is very important to me as a voter, and certainly as a member of Fair Rents, that we have such an ordinance that would promote transparency of contributions to different campaigns. We, as members of Fair Rents, are currently engaged in a campaign to educate the public about the ballot measure that is on the November ballot, or the ordinance that is on the November ballot, to protect Pacifica, or preserve Pacifica, and protect renters' rights. And we are struggling right now trying to carry on that campaign of educating the public, both homeowners and renters, finding it's very, very expensive to have such a campaign. And we are doing whatever we can to raise funds, and we are very worried about any opposition and that would be against our campaign and against the ordinance, wondering how the public is going to know who is supporting this campaign and the ordinance trying to protect renters and who is against it. So to us, it's very, very important that we have this transparency and that this information is made public. I applaud the people that have put forth the effort and all the work on the ordinance and all the research that was done. So thank you for listening, and I urge you to vote for such an ordinance.
Cynthia Kaufman, Carlos Davidson, Delia McGrath.
First of all, I wanted to thank Councilmember Martin for bringing this forward, and to all of you for considering it really seriously. I wanted to echo what Carolyn just said, is that this is really about transparency and fairness. Because of the Citizens United decision of the Supreme Court, we're not able to limit the amount of outside expenditure money that comes into our city, but we can. So this is sort of as much as we can do. And as she said, there are many cities that have done this. I think it's very moderate. It's very well tested what we're trying to do here. And I expect that about $1 million worth of funds is going to hit us for this Fair Rents campaign, compared to probably like $20,000 coming from the pro-Fair Rents people. And I think, one element of democracy is that everybody has an equal voice. We can't make it so that we all have equal voices in this town and in this country, unfortunately, but we can at least make it as fair as possible by making it easy to get the information. After the last election, I did go and get the information about the expenditures in the last election, and it was fine, and Kathy was lovely, and it was an easy process to do. But I think it should just be routine. It should just be a regular thing that everybody knows who's spending what money in an election, so that we can balance out the voices a little bit. So thank you so much for considering this.
Okay, Carlos Davidson, Delia McGrath, Sue Beckmeyer.
Okay. Thank you, City Council, for taking this up, and thank you for the City Attorney for really working on the draft and improving it, and bringing an ordinance forward. I just want to address two issues about workload. I've been one of those people who's requested records from Kathy O'Connell, and she's fantastic. She's great to work with, and I certainly wouldn't want to see the city do something that placed some huge burden on her. And I really think that's not the case. Once you've seen these records, actually the information we're asking for is not so big. For example, on the summaries, with independent expenditures, in the last City Council, there was a total of 6 independent expenditure reports. It would literally take, 5 minutes to total them up and type up the summary. And that was more than ever before, as far as I know, in Pacifica election. And in terms of contributions over $600, again, that's really rare. I probably should have counted those up and brought it in, because I have those records. But my guess is, we're talking about 15 contributions that were over $600. Maybe a little bit more than that, but not a lot. So it's not a huge task to go through those and summarize those. And also in terms of posting, one thing that could be done with implementation is encourage candidates to submit their reports electronically as well as in paper, and then the city gets that PDF report and just has to post it, so they don't have to take paper and go to the electronic. Thank you very much.
Okay. Delia McGrath, Sue Beckmeyer, Bridget Duffy.
Good evening, council and audience and staff. My name is Delia McGrath, and I'm happy to be here to support this ordinance, which I think is excellent and very much needed. I'm on the Fair Rents for Pacifica campaign, and as you know, there's the ballot initiative coming up on November 7th for a yes vote, which we hope will happen. Now, we are raising campaign funds $1 at a time. Our whole campaign is for the good of the community. We're using city residents, we're doing precinct walking. This is a real grassroots effort. And at the same time, we know that there's going to be opposition. We imagine it's going to be huge sources of funding just pouring into the city of Pacifica from outside, from the industries and corporations, and they'll be grabbing the advantage of publicity, which we, with our small donations and different donors and so forth, wouldn't have. So I think in the interest of transparency, it's really, really critical that we get on the map with having free and fair elections. This is one step in that right direction, where donations and independent expenditures are fully disclosed, fully publicized, so that our voters are informed, can make good decisions, because I don't know about you, but I'm a voter, and when I see, well, who is backing this? Who's behind this? Then it helps me decide whether this is a righteous measure to pass or a good candidate or not. So I really appreciate your taking the time to put this on your docket, and I hope that you will pass this very excellent resolution this evening. Thank you.
Sue Beckmeyer, Bridget Duffy, and Peter Loeb.
Good evening, council members. I'm not here in support of this ordinance. I'm actually here to ask, why do we need it? It isn't clear to me what the compelling need is for this ordinance. The Fair Political Practices Commission is a well-established state entity. It was established in 1974 with the passage of Proposition 9, and its primary objectives are to promote transparency in government and to foster the public's trust in our political system. Just quoting from their own information, in the wake of the Watergate scandal, California wanted to rein in the potential corruptive influence of special interests by creating an agency to enforce the most rigorous restrictions on funding and lobbying in the country. To help foster the public's trust in our political system, the Commission will increase transparency by utilizing technology to provide smart disclosure, giving more people easy access to vital information about their public officials and campaign financing. Their objective is to streamline and reduce redundancy, eliminate loopholes, and improve accountability with timely and accurate disclosure. I've worked on a couple of campaigns, and oh, by the way, the reference for that is www.fppc.ca.gov. I've worked on campaigns in Pacifica, and I know, having worked with those regulations, what they require. It seems that with regard to the specific ordinance that you're considering, it's redundant with what FPPC requires, and that the cost to produce the statements that would be posted on the website or posted in the newspaper, and the cost to produce the ads, to create all of that information, it doesn't seem fiscally prudent to me to have the City of Pacifica duplicate what we're already having done with FPPC. So in the ordinance, it stated the cost of the ads. It didn't reference the cost of staff time. I realize that our city clerk is already employed. However, there is an opportunity cost to everything. So it seems to me that if we have extra funds available to devote to this kind of effort that is redundant with something that's already happening at the state level, we should consider restoring funding to the Pacifica libraries, which was cut 2 years ago by this council, not this council, but by a former council, due to our budget, our inability to maintain that budget item. There are other purposes that we could devote our funds to. Thank you.
Bridget Duffy, Peter Loeb, Mike Andrew Schwinn.
Hi, Bridget Duffy. Definitely hope that you support this ordinance. It sounds like it was well thought out by trustworthy people. I think that election reform is definitely, should be top priority for every American citizen, every government worker, every council member, every Senate holder, every congressperson. Everybody in this country should be very, very, very alarmed about what's happening in our elections. And I think we should go even further. I think we should do all paper ballots and have serious oversight over the mail-ins. And I think this should start like right away. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how people get you guys to consider an ordinance, but I'm going to put my mind to finding out. But I do hope you support it, because we definitely need, elections are the bedrock of democracy. Without it, the people have no voice.
Peter Loeb, Mike Andrew Schwinn, and Kristen Andrew Schwinn.
Good evening. I updated my research today. There are 146 cities in California that have a local campaign finance ordinance like this one. Many of them done earlier. This is the modern version. This is the updated, new and improved version 2, because not all ordinances have all these pieces in them. But that's roughly a third of all cities in California have some type of campaign, local ordinance that requires reporting and limits contributions. In San Mateo County, those cities are Belmont, Burlingame, East Palo Alto, Half Moon Bay, Menlo Park. They all have an ordinance of this type, not this same one. I also saw that that 22 of the 58 counties in California have a similar local campaign finance ordinance for the county, and that includes San Mateo County, San Francisco, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Alameda, Marin. This has become a very standard kind of thing. The San Mateo County ordinance limits contributions to candidates to $1,000 from any person or entity. I want to clarify something that was being discussed when the council was talking about this. If I contribute $900, that has to be reported. The limit on the $1,000 isn't about reporting. It's a limit. I can't donate $1,001 is my understanding of how this ordinance works. And it isn't about reporting. It says I can't do that. No, it doesn't say that. Well, the San Mateo County ordinance says that. It limits contributions to candidates to $1,000 from any person or entity. This has become kind of my point is only that this has become a very standard kind of thing, and I hope that the council will adopt this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, Mike Andrew Schwinn, Kirsten Andrew Schwinn, and Kirsten's is the last card I have.
Good evening. I don't really have anything unique to add to the conversation, but I did want to show up tonight in support and thank the council for considering this ordinance. I hope you pass it.
Okay. And Kirsten Andrews Schwinn, or Kirskin, I'm sorry, I can't quite make it out.
Oh, you got it right. Thank you. Yes, good evening. And I want to thank Councilmember Martin for bringing this before the council. And actually, I want to thank all of you for your service on the council. I have a great amount of respect for the amount of time that you put into this. And as a voter here in Pacifica, I was alarmed at the amount of money that came into the elections in the last round. And that's something that I really do want to see transparency on. I think that's would really help us make decisions that are good for our town. So appreciate you bringing this forward, and I encourage you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one, I close the public hearing, bring it back to council for deliberations. I have John.
I'm going to ask the city attorney what her results were.
Councilmember Keener, you are correct. The Political Reform Act states that expenditures equal to or greater than $1,000.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Sorry. You were correct that the Political Reform Act references expenditures, independent expenditures, greater to or equal than $1,000.
Okay.
So
Thank
I would recommend that we amend the language in the ordinance to mirror the Political Reform Act language, which was the intent of this section.
And to do that, we should simply add or equal to. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So that proposal is under small letter C on page 157, section 4, IV, for independent expenditures greater than or equal to $1,000.
And I would also recommend the same amendment to subdivision C, subsection 2, to change it to state totaling striking totaling more than and inserting greater than or equal to $600.
Page is that?
Page 157, subsection C, and I forget what you called it, paragraph 2?
2, yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
You got that? Okay. Sue, are you done?
Yeah, with
Okay.
that.
Sue Vaterlaus?
It could just say $600 or more and
And
make it easier.
I just wrote that down. I
Okay.
think that's preferable, but I didn't want to keep bursting
I
the record.
think that transparency is just fine. We file these reports. If all campaigns and reports and statements are going to be published on the city's website, I think 2 days is a short time period for that. But I also think that we don't need it published in the newspaper. This is the 21st century, and people can look this up on the computer. They don't have to go in and ask for it. But if all reports filed are going to be on the website, why do we need to publish in the newspaper? I think that's the problem with the whole thing. That I don't mind the transparency of this and everything be shown. I just don't think we need to publish in the paper. I'll probably have more later.
Okay. John?
On that issue, I would say we ought to at least try to focus it on a local paper. That is, I think publication in a San Francisco paper or even a San Mateo paper doesn't do us much good, I think. And I'm willing to be persuaded on that. But I think there is a difference in publishing in the Tribune or any successor to the Tribune, if the Tribune were to go away someday.
If there is a successor.
If there is.
If there is a successor, right. And so I'd like, well, I'd like to hear some other views on that, and then maybe craft a little change in language on that point also, if other council members agree with me.
I'm kind of concerned about the cost, but I did check with Lorenzo before the meeting, and this, if it's $400, that isn't, that big a deal for, to pay. However, if we start going into, there is no San Mateo Times, it's now San Jose Mercury News. And I think you can buy sections, like only advertise on the peninsula, but we're still forking over a lot of money to advertise there. I would suggest maybe, I don't know how you would phrase this, but we do have the Connect with Pacifica email that goes out, and that's like 3,000 people, which at this point is higher circulation than the Tribune. That maybe it goes out, and I don't know if we want to call it Connect with Pacifica, but the outgoing email, because I think we all pretty much agree that that's going to stay, no matter who's city manager, no matter what council is up here. And so I would like to maybe amend it to definitely the city's website, but then also whatever electronic communication we send to the public. Deirdre?
Yeah, I would be okay with that. I agree, having it published in a local paper makes the most sense. But I also think if at any time that our local paper does go away, that should be revisited. But I think that amending it to say and connect with Pacifica as well, our local email distro.
I don't know if I'd want to put the name Connect with Pacifica in there, because that might change over the years.
You could say, the city's email distribution.
Weekly email news or whatever it's called. You guys can work that out, your staff.
Yeah, but I think that there are a lot of people that read the Tribune, that do read the Tribune, and that it makes sense to have that in there now. That's my thing.
No, I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I don't think we need to put it in the Chronicle or the San Jose Mercury News or the San Mateo Daily Journal. You know what I mean? So, Sue, agree?
Right. I was thinking about people that aren't that savvy or have emails and such, that some kind of a hard copy should be sent to the local libraries.
That's not a bad idea.
They can keep a file like they do for other things.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe the community center also.
Yeah. So how do we change the language? The city clerk shall publish in a local newspaper of general circulation and on the city's website, and hard copy on the city's website, and
Email distribution. Weekly email distribution.
weekly email distribution, and hard copies at local libraries.
Well, why don't we just put library, city hall?
Library, city hall, okay?
I mean, city hall seems like a logical place to keep it too.
Looks like everybody else is scribbling, so maybe I can.
Okay. And
We also included social media, right?
What's that?
well, that's what the Connect with Pacifica is. That's
Okay.
published on Nextdoor.
Okay, that's what
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
So is that going to pass muster, a local newspaper of general circulation? Will that limit it to the Tribune and not include, the San Mateo Daily News or Times or whatever that is?
The San Mateo Daily Journal.
I think that lends itself to a little question of interpretation. The reason being that a newspaper of general certification has to receive certification from a court to be determined whether or not it is considered a newspaper of general circulation for a particular jurisdiction. So my assumption, and I would defer to the city clerk on this, is the San Jose Mercury News has been certified for Pacifica. And so if we use the words local newspaper of general circulation, that may just suggest that it's any newspaper certified for Pacifica.
Okay.
How about a paper that has been historically?
How about a local newspaper in Pacifica?
Yeah, or published.
Published
you
in
know,
Pacifica.
In Pacifica.
Is it?
Is the
It's
Tribune
not.
published in
No.
Pacifica? No, it isn't.
It's San Jose, I think.
No, he
Nevada.
puts it out in
For
Marin County
Pacifica.
with an emphasis on
Distributed in.
local news.
Pacifica-oriented local newspaper.
You could say a newspaper of general circulation, which newspaper focuses 30% or more of its articles, typically focuses a third of its articles on Pacifica-related matters.
Yeah, we could do that.
Maybe, is this going to come back to us a second time?
It's
first reading tonight.
Yeah, and
about
these
a
changes
local-
we've made so far, I'd be comfortable with amending with a motion to waive first reading and approve by title only.
So is the problem, part of the problem, the general circulation? Why don't we eliminate that and say a local newspaper for Pacifica?
Yeah, you can do that. The issue with that is we have seen some issues in recent years with what constitutes a newspaper, with the influx of internet-driven news media, and so a newspaper of general circulation is a newspaper that has received certification.
Here's what he said, say at the discretion of the city manager.
Yeah. What do you say?
Actually, that's a good idea.
We can add to it, you said, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and say pursuant to the discretion of the city manager.
And then just keep a local newspaper of general
And
circulation.
that'll prevent it from being challenged from someone from the outside.
Okay. Okay. So a local newspaper of general circulation pursuant to the discretion of the
Determination by the
city manager. Yeah. Good.
Can I make a comment on that one? Isn't there any way just to kind of say, I don't know how to say this, but a local newspaper for Pacifica, of general circulation for Pacifica, if that deemed paper were to be disbanded or whatever, however you want to say it, it would go back to council.
I'm comfortable just leaving discretion of city manager, because I'm sure he's going to run it all by each of us to see what, we think, because all of a sudden you got Pacifica Patch. Is that a
newspaper?
Is that a newspaper? Is that a Pacifica newspaper?
We would want to revisit it anyway, so that's kind of my point, is why leave it up to city manager to make the decision if it's going to have to go back to council anyway? So why not just add that in there to say, if the Tribune goes away, it has to go back to council, kind of thing. I don't know. But I'll defer, it's okay. I'll defer to whatever you think.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if a local,
You'll be next.
oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
If a local newspaper does go away, what's the fallback?
It's basically the weekly email letter and the city's website.
So why are we worried about some other paper?
Because if you put in their general circulation, you have the Chronicle, San Mateo Daily Journal, San Jose Mercury News, are all considered papers of general circulation.
So I guess I'm going back to what's the legal language we need, and,
It's kind of already been decided. If you can the
but I
attorney
don't
read it
remember what
back?
we decided, so if you don't mind.
Attorney read it
So,
back.
I have that we decided this.
Can you talk a little louder, please?
Sure, I'm sorry. Let me take it closer to this. The city clerk shall publish in a local newspaper of general circulation, which newspaper is selected pursuant to the discretion of the city manager, comma, on the city's website, comma, through the city's email distribution list, comma, and hard copies shall be made available at the Pacifica Library.
And City Hall.
They're always available at City Hall pursuant to a Public
Oh,
Records Act
okay.
request.
Is that okay, Sue?
Well, I guess I'm still trying to figure out, so we got to all those comma things because we have a newspaper and we're trying to make sure that we talk about it? Or why are we even mentioning, why are we getting into the newspaper thing so in depth?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, I don't think that's a legal question.
Because we want to avoid forcing ourselves to publish this in a more expensive newspaper like the San Jose Mercury News or the San Francisco Chronicle. That's the reasoning behind this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking about $2,500 or something to get a quarter-page
I
ad.
guess, well, I don't want to belabor the point any more than this, but it sounds like you're insisting that it has to be in a newspaper.
I'm not.
I am.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
All right, so
as long
fine.
as
That's
we-
all I wanted to know, is how do we get to all these commas and stuff? Okay, fine.
Okay, Sue Vatter-Laus.
So it still is going to present the city clerk, with a lot of extra work because she has to sort through everything that's already been put online and take out everything that is 600 or more, or any independent expenditures that are $1,000 or more, and then she has to go through and make a summary of all that information. It's not like this previous 3B says you can scan everything that people sent you and it's going to be online. The rest of this involves a lot more labor and work on her part. When everything else, every single contribution of $100 or more will be already online, already, based on 3B.
Can I just ask a question? Do we now file the I mean, it's been 3 or 4 years since I ran, so are the forms for candidates running now, are they all online? I thought we turned a paper copy into you.
You do.
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're not online now?
No, the Form 700s we put online during the election period, but that's all.
I forget the
right
form
now.
numbers for the
The
others.
Form 460s and other forms
70s
are
are not online, yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
But you have that in your ordinance.
So related to that, though, is if you look at the San Bruno website, they've got everything online. You go to their, just one page, and I just happened across this, once 6 months ago, and it's great. It's a little bit of work to scan it all, but on the other hand, that may come out about even, because, you do have to copy all the forms for each records request. So, but the summary, like Carlos said, it doesn't amount to that many names that are over $600 from, or over 1,000, depending on the category. It is definitely more work, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's onerous. But I'm talking about your work and not mine, of course.
What I would just like to add is, and I'm just commenting, I'm not complaining or anything, but tonight we just assigned her that every resolution and ordinance we make now has to be posted online. And now we're adding this to the duties of the city clerk also. And I just don't incrementally, there are other, she's like the legal process server for the city. And I have no problem with you file the form and all of it's online. We turn the form into her, she scans it, posts it online, and then if you get the $1,000 and have to do the 24-hour thing, she scans it, puts it online. I just don't see the issue, and that would be every campaign contribution $100 or more. So I'm actually asking for more disclosure than what the $600 is. And I think it would be easier for the city clerk, because your comment that it wouldn't be a lot of work for Kathy, I would ask this question: for contributions from a single source totaling more than $600, who's going to keep track of the $600? What if they make 3 $200 payments? Or not payments, but donations.
Contributions.
Yeah.
You have to, the candidate, have to, or your treasurer
we
has
have to do the cumulative, but when she gets the report, it says 200, 200, 200, and I think, it's a more burden for her to just scan the entire thing in, post it on the website, and it's kind of done.
Well,
and require the candidate to send it in electronically, so she doesn't even have to scan it. She can take it as a PDF and instantly put it online, so she doesn't have to sort through anything, and then she would just put on every single thing, which is more transparent.
I'm just asking, can we submit, you need original signatures on that, so we would have to scan it, post it to you, email it to you, then still walk in and hand it to you, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify, that's all.
no way around that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Or at least not yet.
So, I mean, I have no problem posting this stuff on the web. I mean, it's just kind of like the nuts and bolts of this. And I just think just scan everything, post it all on the web, and it's done. And, you know, the same rules, the $1,000, you know, 24-hour thing, that's fine. It's actually more disclosure.
Fine by me. Can I talk now?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your light.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think that's fine too. I forget what I was going to say. Forget it.
I still like the publication of the summary in the Tribune, because I think there are, as Sue Degree said earlier, I think she did, that there are a number of people in town who don't use computers to any degree at all, and get their information from the Tribune, and so that would be useful for them. And, you know, maybe when the Tribune dies, that'll sort of...
Don't be pessimistic.
Does everybody know something more than I know here?
I don't, but print media is on its way out. That's what we all know.
Hey, Deirdre?
I remember what I was going to say. So I think there's a little more work involved, yes. I would fully support anything that makes city clerk's life easier. I also still support the newspaper. But this is the 21st century. I work on a computer all day long. I think most of us do. And I work in IT. And this is what we're going to need to do eventually anyway, so we might as well just get ahead of the pack and do it as simple as possible. Let city clerk come up with the form however it needs to be presented, and really just kind of leave that up to however it's easiest.
So what you're saying is that in addition to the FPPC forms, they would have a City of Pacifica form to put the $600 and more on there, so all she has to do is scan it and post it?
I'm not suggesting how she does her job. I'm suggesting that city clerk makes that decision of how it comes easiest in the workload. And as long as it complies with our ordinance, that's it.
Okay. Sue Varelos?
The FPPC has a rule about $1,000 or more. That has to come in within 24 hours of receiving it. So this $600 limit is the issue, because the FPPC form at $1,000 would come in as a single form whenever someone receives $1,000 or more within 24 hours. So that would make this a lot easier if it said $1,000, if you have to put it in the paper, then it would be just the form that the FPPC has.
No, I mean, we wrote this for a reason the way it is with the $600.
We wrote this for a reason.
Yes, me, city clerk, the community, or city attorney, community. You saw it Wednesday, right?
What's the reason? Why is it 600 and not 1,000? Just a question.
First, there was only 6 that were over that allotment this past election cycle, and this past election cycle was very heavily watched. So the reason is the same reason that when you go to a certain store, you vote with your money. It's the same reason why I don't buy bottled water. It's the same. These are all the same reasons. That's why it's $600. So whether that makes sense to you or not, that's how it makes sense most to me.
If $100 is being reported, why are you worried about $600? $100 is being reported.
Yes, $100 is being reported, correct. That's it. And so I'm ready to make a motion.
No, I have another issue.
Okay.
And Sue Degree wants to talk.
Yeah, so I think the goal, if I'm hearing us all correctly, the goal is simplicity for our residents, and that regarding the city clerk's job fluctuates in the amount of, and that the city and the council should definitely and will support the city clerk, I would hope, so that as a workload for an employee hits a certain mark, that we would support. The city manager would step in and make sure that the city clerk isn't spending nights at the city hall trying to achieve something. So I think for the simplicity of the community at large, the 600 point, now I've talked to nobody. I would think that being simple for the public to see without having to go add up the hundreds, that they could see whether or not you had a whole bunch of 600s coming from a certain area or for certain groups. I think that would be significant. That's just a guess. Rather than, and the FPPC rules, I think, what was the date you said they came? I don't know when they were last updated. Something was updated in 2015, but I really don't know what it was. Maybe the FPPC will be coming around to the way we're seeing it. I don't know, but I think the main goal is simplicity for the residents, so it's easy for them to get a handle on where the money is coming for whatever, and that we, the council and the city manager, will support the city clerk at any event that, whatever the issue is, we wouldn't want to see a city clerk, I think you're considered exempt, right? Having to stay at City Hall all hours of the night and gets Fridays after all. Gets Friday off, like everybody else.
Okay.
That goes, city manager, too bad for you, but anyway.
Okay, so I think it's basically, the consensus I hear is that staying as is at 600, and with the city clerk, is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. The other issue I wanted to bring up is there's stuff here that the independent expenditure shall notify the opponents or the other candidates, etc. It's section.
Page number?
It's page 157, section E of subsection 3. And it's also mentioned again, section 4, item D on page 155. And I don't have a problem with that. The only thing I would like to add is that the delivery will go to the address on the form that they submitted for their candidacy. Because nowhere does it say where you deliver it. It just says who you delivered to. And well, it says by email, but I just think it would be nice that to the something like the contact information the candidate delivered.
Yeah, on the initial form that you fill out.
Intent to run or something. 410, 510, something like that.
Something like that.
And it's deemed delivered if it's sent to that address and or the email address.
What page are you on?
157, 155.
157.
In number E, yes.
Okay.
I just think should add a thing in there that they know where to send it.
Oh, and it says 24 hours, so if you deliver it on a Saturday, how are you going to find out the information within 24 hours? The other item up here, which although it's short, 2 working days, would make more sense than 24 hours. Because what if you don't know the other people, the other candidates? You can't find that out Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. You have to find it out somehow.
Yeah, I think it has to be 2 business days. But I just think you need to know where the address is to send you a notification.
What is the definition of 24 hours? I mean, it's just like straight up hours, or is it business hours?
It is exactly that, 24 hours.
It's just straight 24 hours. It's nothing to do with day of the week or business hours. So it shall be made within. Notification shall be made within.
1 business day. 2 business days?
I'm just reading this as it is right now. I'm not making suggestions just yet. Such notification should be made within.
Isn't this modeled after the FPPC, though?
No, because in the FPPC, you don't have to notify the other candidates of any contributions.
think 24 hours is fine.
10:30.
By email?
Oh.
You can't send an email. We do it all the
What
time.
if you
I do it right
don't
up right now.
have the person's email? How are you going to get it?
Download his Form 410 from the website.
But that's not on the web. That's not on the website, is it?
Yes, it will be under this.
Mm-hmm.
The 510?
Yes, if we're going to put all the campaign disclosure statements on the website, then that would be there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that, well, then I would just like to add the thing that the notification is sent to the address of record on that form.
Fine.
Yeah, it says shall be made within 24 hours by email, comma, guaranteed overnight, blah, 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 blah. So you have the email option, and as long as you have access to an email address, which you would.
Well, not necessarily, because we just found out from Sue, there's a lot of people in town that don't mess with computers. And
If they're filing
that's
an
why we're
independent-
published in the Tribune.
But if they're filing an independent expenditure, my guess is that they know what they're doing.
Well, the notification
Reporting.
is to, by email to candidates. So, I know that you are a thoroughly modern fella. You've got email, Sue's got email, we've all got email.
My mother-in-law doesn't. She's 77.
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to run for anything.
Yeah.
So
You're going to get challenged.
Yeah. I think we need a.
I have one more question.
Yeah, Sue Vattel.
To the city clerk, do any of the forms have social security numbers on them?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, I don't think that should be public.
No way.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance entitled an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacifica amending the title of Chapter 8 of Title 2 regarding elections and adding Section 2-8.05 to Chapter 8 of Title 2 of the Pacifica Municipal Code regarding publication and reporting of campaign contributions and independent expenditure information, and read by title only with the revisions that were made this evening. That good?
And are the revisions clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Staff doesn't need any more guidance?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a first, second. Sue Vattel?
I just want to say that sometimes I vote no. I will likely vote no on this, only because I believe in the transparency. I believe that everything should go on the website. I think it's just not right for the city clerk to have to do all the rest of the items. I think that's transparent enough, and so I will vote no.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments? Okay, please vote. Okay, that motion passes 4-1. Next item, it is 10:37, but I think we can get rid of the next item before 11, as long as nobody talks a lot. Okay, item number 15, repeal and rescind ordinance numbers 814, following referendum petition. Staff report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, council members. On April 24th, 2017, the City Council adopted ordinance number 814, the interim ordinance of the City Council establishing a temporary moratorium on certain residential rent increases in the City of Pacifica and requiring just cause eviction or just cause for tenant evictions within the city. Prior to ordinance number 814's effective date of May 24th, 2017, the city clerk received a referendum petition in opposition. The San Mateo County Registrar determined that the referendum petition contained the requisite number of signatures for the petition to be valid. At the June 26th City Council meeting, the council accepted the city clerk's certificate of sufficiency, Pursuant to California Elections Code, Sections 1410 and 9241, the council must either repeal the ordinance challenged by the referendum or place the challenged ordinance on a ballot. At the June 26 meeting, council directed staff to prepare an ordinance repealing and rescinding ordinance number 814. The ordinance is attached for introduction.
Okay. I have one card from the public. Bridget?
Completely confused about what this is about. Can I ask?
Basically, there was a referendum, the council put an ordinance into effect. The group collected enough signatures, submitted them, the signatures were found valid, so the council has two options: put it on the ballot or rescind it. It makes no sense to put it on the ballot because on election day, it ends. So there's really no reason to put it on the ballot.
Right.
Well, this was the temporary.
The temporary one.
Temporary moratorium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the signature gatherers that was in town. Okay, I'm glad that this is coming up, and I'm glad you're doing this, and I won't take too much of your time, but I did have a conversation with one of the men, and he explained to me that the company that he works for hires people from all over the country. He told me how he couldn't get any work anywhere else but had to work for this company, and it is pretty bad in this country, our economy. They change their story every city they go to. It depends on which petition they have. They'll be for rent control. They'll be against rent control. They'll be for gay rights. They'll be, 2 weeks later, they'll be against gay rights. It's whatever their company tells them. He didn't know who he was working for. They worked for a guy who spoke of a client. So nobody knew who they were working for. They were from all over the place. They were pretty much vagrants with clipboards and card tables. And they're a real threat to our little town, to the safety of our little town. We should discourage them. And by rescinding it, I think it would discourage them. And I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay, I have no other yellow cards. So I bring it back to council for deliberation. John?
I'm ready to make a motion. I move to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacifica, repealing and rescinding ordinance number 814, an interim ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacifica, establishing a temporary moratorium on certain residential rent increases in the City of Pacifica and requiring just cause for tenant evictions within the city.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
So Deirdre seconds. Any comments? Please vote. And that motion passes 5-0. Okay, last item on the agenda, designation of voting delegate for League of California Cities Annual Conference. Nominations.
Are you
Who's
not
going?
I'm going. I was going to go.
Anybody else?
So the question is, who's going to be the one to vote, right?
Yeah,
When
they
you're-
have their
when you're
general
going,
assembly.
Isn't it automatically that the
We
mayor?
have to vote, but Sue Vaterlas just said she was going too. So it's on the Friday. Did I just hear you say you're going to, Sue? Yeah, so,
I'm
So
going.
we do need a voting delegate and an alternate.
oh, but darn it, there's 3 and only 2 spots. Oh my God.
Doesn't matter. I don't need to vote.
Yeah, we can have 2 alternates. It doesn't make much difference to me.
I'll vote.
But no, you're a mayor.
Okay.
You should do it.
Well, yeah, you probably should as the mayor.
Okay, then I guess I'm, by acclamation, I guess I need a motion for that.
And we'll be the alternates.
And either Sue Vaterlas or Sue Degree. You can just send them Sue will be
2
the
times
alternate.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sue will be the alternate. Okay, so are we all, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to designate Mayor O'Neill as a voting delegate for the League of California Cities Annual Conference, and Councilmember Valos and Councilmember Stickery as alternates.
Second.
Please vote. And that motion passes 5-0. And there's nothing else being on the agenda. I adjourn the meeting.
Good job, Mayor. We made it.
Yeah. We made it before 11, but they still want you to do it. You did it in 38 minutes.
I was trying.
That night, oh, you know what?
I draw.